unbeaten Brazilian Pedro Rizzo, Japanese shoot fighter Tsuyoshi Kosaka, champion wrestler Kevin Randleman, Lion's Den fighter Pete Williams. 4 of the toughest heavyweights in the world battle it out in the Octagon as the UFC looks to crown a new heavyweight champion and name a #1 contender. Plus, the most intense full-contact event in sports today returns to the land of the rising sun as the Ultimate Fighting Championship presents UFC 23.
We welcome you to beautiful Tokyo, Japan. This is the Tokyo Bay NK Hall. Now remember, 2 years ago we were down the road 18 minutes on the Shinkansen, the bullet train, in Shin, Yokohama. But the point tonight is once again, the UFC has gone global, and we are set for UFC 23. Hi again, everybody. Mike Goldberg alongside Olympic gold medalist Jeff Blatnick. We welcome you to Tokyo, Japan and UFC 23. A special night again as we go global for the second time, partner. And we've got a UFC-J tournament reintroduced and also some great middleweight bouts.
Well, many fans love the old tournament format, so we're going to see a bunch of new fighters here in the old format that the show used to be run by. And then, of course, 2 middleweight bouts. Couple guys who have Octagon experience, along with a couple newcomers. The experienced ones, Jason DeLucia and Eugene Jackson.
I love watching Eugene Jackson fight. I know what you love the most, and you love all the fighters, but you love the heavyweights. And that will truly be the focus of our night here tonight in Tokyo, where tonight we will find out who our new #1 contender is in the heavyweight division, and we'll find out who our new heavyweight champion is.
Well, the contenders, you're talking about Tsuyoshi Kosaka and Pedro Rizzo. Both come from former champions. Huas coached Rizzo, and on the other side, Maurice Smith helped TK. So look at these two to really go at it. They realize that the heavyweight belt is up for grabs. They want to be in line for it, and both these athletes have done great jobs out in the Octagon.
And the heavyweight belt is literally on the line and will be given to the winner of the bout tonight between Kevin Randleman and Pete Williams.
Now, many people thought Randleman may have had a bad judge's decision go against him in his title fight against Bas Rutten, and I happen to be one of those people. But really, Kevin Randleman, extremely talented. Pete Williams, extremely talented. Those two from former champions camps. Really, this is going to be a great fight. A new champion will be crowned.
And he will be crowned because of some recent news in the UFC. Bas Rutten has officially relinquished his heavyweight belt. He will fight in the future in the middleweight division. And as of our broadcast day today, the middleweight division no longer has a champion named Frank Shamrock, as Shamrock has recently announced his retirement. Jeff and I will talk about many of those things throughout the evening. To help us with the news and notes in the UFC, let's check in with the third man of our broadcast crew backstage. It's James Wormy.
Thank you very much, Mike and Jeff. I will be backstage all evening long getting all the post-fight commentary. Tension already started to build back here. The fighters are starting to arrive and get loose. There's press everywhere. It is a huge deal that we're back here in Japan. Of course, everyone looking forward to the UFC-J tournament and the double heavyweight main event. And speaking of heavyweights, I am joined by Bas Rutten, the former UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Boss, Mike and Jeff just explained to the fans at home that you will be dropping your title and moving to the middleweight division, but we want to hear it from you.
Yes, that's right. Last time I came in, I was 203, and I just came out of the restaurant, so I figured I was already under 200 pounds. So my natural weight always has been under 200 pounds. So to try to be the first one in history who has a middleweight and a heavyweight title, I will drop down to middleweight, and I'm looking for Frank Shamrock to fight.
Boss mentions Frank Shamrock. Now, Frank Shamrock relinquished his title after his last defense, but he did say that if a fighter and a fight came along that excited him, he'd be willing to jump back in the Octagon. Bas Rutten versus Frank Shamrock is certainly an exciting fight. Do you think it's exciting to Frank?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We fought 3 times, and all the time it's been very exciting. And but I think I grow in the fights. First time I lost, the second time I won, third time I really won good. And I think he grew a lot in his no-holds-barred type fighting. But I think I did too, and I think it's going to be an exciting match for the people to watch at home.
Happy to be back in Japan, Boss?
I'm very happy to be back in Japan. It's the best country.
This guy's like the mayor around here. Well, I'll tell you, it's going to be a big night. Boss is here. Everyone's here. Back to you guys in the booth.
James, Boss, thank you. Wouldn't that be a heck of a matchup?
I really think it would, and I really think the fans would love to see that fight.
So it could be in our future. Frank Shamrock and Boss Rutan for the middleweight title. Octagon regulations, as always, 3 judges score the bout. The durations tonight in our new round system utilized once again. The non-title fights, 3 5-minute rounds, and the title fight, 5 5-minute rounds.
And the scoring system, the round winner will receive 10 points and the opponent 9 or less, and it's based on effective striking, effective grappling, and effective aggressiveness. Don't forget Octagon control.
Our judges this evening, Yoshinori Yumiki, Yuji Murayami, and Takahira Fukasi, as all assigned by UFCJ, our partners here in Tokyo, Japan. Our first matchup will be a tournament semifinal between Katsuhisa Fuji and Matsutake Yano. Fuji and Yano both making their Octagon debuts. This is a good look at Matsuyashi Yano, 24 years old, born in Japan, belongs to the Real Japanese Wrestling Gym, just 5'8", but good grappling skills.
And if you're a good wrestler, that means you have control of takedowns and can dictate whether you keep it standing or on the mat.
And Fuji, a strong competitor with the goatee, and he will be a formidable opponent tonight for Yano.
Shuto involves a little bit more of what we call mixed martial arts rules, so look for him with his striking ability to be someone that's going to have the ability to really work people on their feet.
And there is Fuji from Hiroshima here in Japan, fighting in a UFC style for the first time, and there are some distinctive differences as he enters our famous gated walls for the first time.
Well, the biggest difference will be this is a tournament format, and so many of our original fans of the UFC love the tournament, and when you're in a tournament, you have to be conscious of not only defeating your opponent, but not injuring yourself in the process. And of course, broken hands seem to be the big culprit, knocking people out of tournaments.
And with Fuji's striking ability, that is a distinct possibility as he gets set to take on the 24-year-old Yano. Yano, a career wrestler, has won championships in both free and Greco-Roman style wrestling during his collegiate years. He was the 4th place finisher at the All-Japanese Wrestling Championships most recently.
That means he's a very, very good wrestler. The Japanese are excellent in freestyle wrestling. Look for him, if he chooses to, if he feels threatened on his feet, to go ahead and take it down to the ground. Question will be, what does he know about submissions and guard?
So 2 distinctive styles, with Fuji perhaps being the better striker, Yano with the better wrestling skills. His discipline is wrestling. He's 3 years younger than the shoot fighter. Gives away a couple of inches, and Fuji definitely with a size advantage at just under 220 pounds. Now keep in mind, in the tournament format for the Japanese, the weight classes aren't as distinctive as they are in the States. Here's the discipline description on Fuji.
Amateur Shuto champion. That involves more mixed martial arts style rules involving striking. He's a strong striker, and of course, submission locks.
So Fuji takes on Yano in our first matchup of the night, with the heavyweights still ahead on the card here from Tokyo, Japan. And Yano is definitely the young man who has the wrestling ability with the takedowns, and that means perhaps the ground control.
It'll be interesting to see how much he knows about mixed martial arts. With the wrestling ability comes takedown ability, and if you have the takedown control, you can dictate where the fight takes place. So we'll learn a lot about Yano very early on by his tactic. Is he going to try to bring it down to the ground, or is he going to measure his opponent in his ability to stay on his feet striking?
You know, the last time we were in Japan, Randy Couture against Maurice Smith, the wrestler against the striker. And perhaps that's what we have in our first tournament semifinal here tonight. Our good friend Mario Yamasaki will be our referee for the first couple of bouts this evening, and then the all-too-familiar Big John McCarthy will call some of the later matches. First tournament semifinal, we are set to go.
Well, let's see what Yano decides to do. I'm sure he'll try to measure Fuji and see what kind of striking ability he has before going on and making his choice as to where to go ahead and put the fight.
What is the major difference, Jeff, for this first competition inside the Octagon for these both very experienced fighters?
Well, right away, you know, the Japanese crowd control their emotions. It's a display of strength to not let their emotions show. In the United States, it's the exact opposite at a sporting event. Everybody wears their emotions on their sleeves, so there's relative silence as these two engage. That's the first thing right away that I notice.
And it's always a difference when you see the fights on any level in the country of Japan. They understand the fight game so well that they watch it in the way that many U.S. audiences would watch perhaps a golf tournament or a tennis match.
And they have so many different organizations staging various styles of martial arts competitions. So based on that, there's a strong following in all the martial arts, and especially now, mixed martial arts.
Yano in the white trunks, and Fuji with the goatee in the gold trunks.
Well, they're measuring each other. Neither one is really engaged. It's all been feel-out strikes. Nice right hand, but again, really not set up very much.
Yano with a low kick. Now, those can have damage if continuously delivered. You just kind of break down your opponent, as we have seen in the past. Utilized probably most effectively during the career of Maurice Smith.
Yano experienced in both freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling, meaning he's got the ability to shoot on legs and tackle or tie up the upper body. And of course, we saw Randy Couture against Belfort be able to tie up the upper body and then take advantage of infighting, striking from close range.
Katsu tried the combination to return the right that landed and glanced off his left side just a moment ago. So Katsu and Yano now kind of feeling each other out 2 minutes into round number 1 of this 15-minute bout.
A bit of a slow pace. Neither one has really come in and engaged. They're still sort of feeling out. It might be that Fuji's waiting for Yano to take a shot, but it appears as though Yano doesn't feel threatened at all by Fuji's striking skills, so he sees no reason to rush it to the ground.
Now, Katsu tried to deliver a knee that time, and the quickness of Yano, he was able to counter that attack.
But that, once again, that knee coming up is indicative, as if Yano had shot at that precise moment, he would have shot right into a knee strike.
And there is Yano again. That time he tried to shoot in a big combination of a right and a left. And Fuji coming at Matsuyashi Yano now.
And there's Yano. Once he starts feeling vulnerable on his feet, immediately resorted to his instinct, and that's a wrestler. Let's get it down on the ground where you no longer have the freedom to strike me at will.
Striking with rights and a big right punch and another. Oh, and that one delivered.
Armbar.
For submission.
Armbar. Fuji's got an arm, but Yano's got his elbow on the thigh. He doesn't have that arm extended, no pressure, and he gets it free.
And some big lefts delivered to the facial area of Fuji by Yano. So somewhat of a guard position, but yet Yano being able to take advantage and strike from on top.
And what a flurry of energy spent and activity of skill once they committed to a strategy. And dancing around on their feet, neither one did until Fuji started getting the Yano, and then Yano turned it into this.
Oh, he's really delivering combinations now.
Question is what kind of striker is Yano? It's one thing to hit with a punch, but is the punch effective in terms of the power behind it? It doesn't seem as though Fuji is really affected by those punches.
It doesn't appear as if Fuji is able to get a full guard position on Yano here, Jeff.
Well, in terms of a complete guard, a closed guard, wrapping his legs totally, but as TK uses an open guard, and that is just keep them between the knees, keep them inside your legs, doesn't matter whether they're wrapped. And that's really the individuality and creativity of the athlete, what works best for you. But being pushed up against the fence like this with no room to maneuver really does put Fuji in a stationary position, allowing Yano to hit him with strikes.
20 seconds remaining in round 1. 3 5-minute rounds in this tournament semifinal number 1 on the card here tonight at UFC 23 in Tokyo, Japan.
And Yano's arm was nearly caught in an armbar early on. He was able to free it, but it seems as though Fuji not only can strike on his feet, but he's got a pretty competent guard and will look to try and transition into a submission.
I would say the way that Yano finished round 1, he would be in the lead early in the fight.
At this point, he seemed to rally quite well, and he was very, very active from within Fuji's guard and landed a number of strikes. So I would agree with you. I think Fuji's ahead. Excuse me, Yano is ahead. Yano is ahead at this point.
Well, Fuji is the better-known striker, as we talked about, but yet Yano trying to deliver strikes to Fuji. One would guess as a shoot fighter, if you have thrown punches, then you have taken punches. So if one is better at taking the punches, I'm going to guess as these two make their debut tonight, it would be Fuji.
Absolutely, that's a good read, and he is used to the striking game, and that gives him, an edge in experience. But, Yano did the right thing. Why take it to the ground and go into a submission position if you really don't feel threatened on the feet? And once he started eating some fists there in that one big flurry, he realized this is not the place to be. Let's get it down on the ground. And once he put it on the ground, he was very effective with his striking there. So he got a good takedown and a number of strikes in.
So round number 2 underway. Our referee, Mario Yamasaki, Mike Goldberg, Jeff Blatnick, James Wormy. Happy to be here in Tokyo, Japan for UFC 23.
And let's see if Fuji now, knowing that if he can get to Yano on his feet, has the ability to score. He seemed totally at ease on his back in the guard, but he was getting hit by Yano. So it'll be interesting to see the way the judges scored. And again, it's Japanese judges. So we're not sure how they go ahead and interpret this Japanese style of fighting. And the tournament is fought under the UFC J rules.
They are familiar with the criteria used in UFC competition stateside. Also that same criteria in Brazil. Quick left jab by Katsu there.
And I need to make a point, Mike. Really, the only difference between UFC J is allowing people of slightly different sizes, where we have the weight categories now, and we're very precise with them. They'll allow different size fighters to go ahead and compete. However, when it comes to the actual skills allowed and not allowed, they mirror the UFC.
And that's what we will see later on in the show and on the card tonight, where a young man like Takase takes to the Octagon. But we'll stay on this tournament semifinal number 1. First of all, Yano against Fuji. Yano, the 24-year-old, Fuji, the good fighter, the striker, the shoot fighter, and a former champion in that regard.
What I'm watching here, and it might be true, when you talk about a striker, some people like to move forward and initiate, while others like to counter. And it seems to me that Fuji's a counterer. He is not stepping forward even to jab much. There's really his first attempt, but without a doubt, Yano is waiting. And he's playing the classic grappler game, and that is go ahead and throw a big punch. If it wings by me and you miss and follow through, I'm going under and taking you down.
Now, Katsu has taken the middle of the ring, which is something that Ken Shamrock always talked about. But Yano knows for him to go toe-to-toe with Fuji would be a serious mistake. And so if he can display the patience and wait for an opportunity to shoot again, as he did in round number 1, that's exactly what he's going to do.
You can get lulled into that belief that, hey, I'm doing all right, let's start to press, and that's exactly what your opponent's waiting for. And Fuji seemed to be the better striker on his feet, and he just may be waiting for Yano to try to do something too aggressive and start picking him apart.
Midway point of round 2 here, Jeff, pardon me. 2.5 minutes remaining in round 2. Remember, 3 5-minute rounds in tournament semifinal number 1.
And this is a bit of a slow pace in terms of real scoring activity. They're circling, they're measuring each other, but neither man is committing to the full-fledged attack.
I think what the interesting point that needs to be made here is that a fight on the feet, advantage to Fuji, but yet he has shown no ability to score any points on his feet. Any points that were scored in the matchup were when it went to the ground and we went into Yano's world.
That's exactly correct. It'll be interesting to see. Oh, big right hand. Fuji caught him. He was patient and he landed a big right hand.
Now a big flurry, and he's going for the finish.
And that's going to do it.
And Yamasaki steps in, and Fuji, just as I said, was unable to do damage on his feet, wins the tournament semifinal number 1.
It was out of the blue, just a big right hand. It hit him and it knocked him down. Fuji immediately took advantage of it, came in swinging, and to referee Mario Yamasaki, it appeared as though Yano was in trouble. He ended the bout.
So just as some may have grown impatient with the lack of striking on the feet, it is the young man Fuji who scores the TKO in round 2 at 3:14 and wins tournament semifinal number 1.
We were talking about Fuji being a counterpuncher, not really stepping forward to punch, and here he moves in with that right hand, and what a result. He knocks Yano down. Yano definitely stunned, and now Fuji starts pouring it on. Multiple strikes to the head, no response from Yano, and Mario Yamasaki stops it.
So Fuji will advance and fight later tonight here in UFC J, the tournament. UFC 23. Our next tournament semifinal features Kenichi Yamamoto against Daiju Takase. Now, we have seen Takase in the UFC before, and in his career, he has TKO'd a super heavyweight of 550 pounds, Emmanuel Yarborough. Yamamoto, on the other hand, 23 years old, born in Osaka, Japan, has fought a lot in rings.
And because of that, he is going to be well-versed in submission locks. The big question will be, what kind of striking skills will he enter the octagon with?
There's a good look at Takase, who does have some pretty good striking skills. One of the more notable fighters in Japan today.
Takase, in his UFC debut, took on Jeremy Horn, but he was giving up almost 30 pounds to Horn, and he lost that fight. He's looking to make amends here. He's got a good combination of submission skills and striking, and look for him to try to bring them to bear against Yamamoto.
Well, certainly Takase at just around 170 pounds illustrates the point that we talked about in the first tournament semifinal, where we will see a difference in weight classes within the tournament rules of UFC J, our partners overseas here in Tokyo, Japan. But Takase impressive with his speed at 21 years old, of course fighting in front of the hometown fans tonight.
Again, that eerie quiet that settles over these Japanese fans, and it's out of respect. They respect them so much they don't wish to be the show. They want the athletes to be the show and the display of their skill to be the focus.
Coming out of the red corner, if you want to talk about the more charismatic fighter of the two, it is certainly this man, Kenichi Yamamoto, 23 years old, born in Osaka, belongs to the Power of Dream gym. You can see him draped with the red robe and almost a Tyson-like look as he enters the ring with, as I mentioned, a bit more flash and dash than perhaps the younger Daiju Takase.
He seems very well-rounded with his skills, very good at submissions. He also likes to use kicks and punches with knees, a little bit of Muay Thai background, but they say he's a methodical fighter. Looking at the footage that I saw beforehand, he seemed very mobile and very, very adept at submissions. So this is almost looking like a striker versus grappler, in that Yamamoto seems very good on the ground and Takase prefers to stay up on his feet and strike.
Yamamoto really trying to strike up some, I suppose, some anticipation of a big hit inside the octagon, with the strut and a lot of confidence for this 23-year-old who made a debut at the UWF International in 1994. He's fought many matches at the Kingdom, drew the attention of many by beating fighters of Ultimate Fighting and Jiu-Jitsu. And in July 98, he switched to rings before forming the Power of Dream. So the blonde is Yamamoto. He is 23 years old, 6 foot, 204 pounds, and the difference in weight for Takase, again, will be a dramatic story, as it was in his match against Jeremy Horn, as he gives up 34 pounds. There is Daiju Takase, 21 years old, born here in Japan.
And this is meditation. This isn't the end of the fight. He is sitting there focusing down. Very quick. As we said, he probably is going to want to stay on his feet and strike with his opponent, but he's giving up a little bit of weight. And when I went ahead and looked at Yamamoto, what he's giving up is 34 pounds of what looks like a lot of muscle.
Well, Yamamoto has the build similar to what we will see later in our heavyweight title bout of a Kevin Randleman. Not as heavy as Randleman, but Yamamoto still structured in the muscle in the same fashion as Kevin is, and we will see him later tonight in the heavyweight matchup.
Well, it's going to force Takase to be very technical. He'll have to use his speed against somebody like Yamamoto, who possesses great submission skills. A complete striker likes to use all facets of striking. The knock on him is he's a methodical fighter, which means you can be predictable, and that's something Takase may want to use to his advantage.
Overall, some of the Japanese fighters, because they work under different disciplines that are unlike ours in the UFC, where the punches fly more frequently, have been criticized in the past of being technical because every little chess move can mean such a difference between winning and losing in pancrase or shoot fighting or some of the other disciplines.
Well, when you transition styles, it always forces you to refocus what your technique, what your tactic, and what your strategy is going to be for an opponent.
Tournament semifinal number 2. Takase and Yamamoto, Mario Yamasaki ready to get it underway.
Let's see if Yamamoto comes right out and starts throwing strikes to see whether or not Takase has the power. Wow, Takase, a leaping guard, and he drags Yamamoto down to the ground. Doesn't look like Takase is looking to strike here. It looks like he's willing to grapple. Interesting.
I think Takase might have taken part of a right hand from Yamamoto too, which all of a sudden he said, hey, I got to close this distance before I get into a toe-to-toe start in the first 20 seconds of my tournament semifinal matchup.
And Horn did very well here. He not only was able to strike from Takase's guard, he was able to pass it and continue to strike. Let's see if Yamamoto has the ability to pass guard. Seems as though Yamamoto here is living up to his methodical fighter label in that even though he's in a position here taking his opponent down, he's not looking to really move very quickly. Takase tying up the left hand of Yamamoto.
I suppose if you talk about methodical fighters, that was the criticism that was placed upon our lightweight champion, Pat Miletich, for many matchups. But he said, hey, I win, I wait for my opportunity.
Win, baby, is the name of the fight game. And if you're not blessed with the most spectacular skills, still does not mean you can't be a successful fighter. Power to Pat Miletich for understanding his limitations, not trying to be a fighter that he isn't, staying within himself, and that all spells to discipline. And discipline, self-training, is really what gets an athlete to reach their potential.
So Yamamoto may perhaps have some of that patience then, being a virtue, as we see in Pat Miletich.
I'm very surprised here. He really hasn't done a whole lot of anything. Takase, a leaping guard, literally jumped up, wrapped his legs, and dragged Yamamoto down. But here, Yamamoto, it almost seems like he's pacing himself. Stamina might be a problem with Yamamoto, that he blows up. But nothing happening here. Much like the first fight, they seem to be measuring, they seem to be waiting, but when the floodgates open, watch for that flurry.
Well, this will be the first match since leaving the rings for Kenichi Yamamoto. Takase, as we mentioned, has been in the UFC before. This is a debut tonight for the 23-year-old from Osaka, Japan, Yamamoto. Fuji has already won the first tournament semifinal, and the two winners will meet later for the UFCJ tournament belt. The middleweight still ahead on our fight card tonight in UFC 23, and the heavyweights. Williams, Randleman, TK, Tsuyoshi Kosaka, all members of the Fight Club tonight here at UFC 23.
Well, what Takase is doing very well is each time Yamamoto tries to get up to his legs like that, now a flurry. Ground and pound happening. Not a lot of scoring there, but at least now it seems that Yamamoto is starting to go to offense. Up to now, it's just been Takase tying up his wrists and adjusting his hips each time that Yamamoto tries to move up on him. He brought his legs up and tried to stretch him out again. Yamamoto there made a commitment to get to his feet from within the guard, and at least then he tossed a few strikes, but once again, he seems to be going back down.
1 minute, 40 seconds remaining here in round number 1.
Interesting looking at Takase, he's wearing a shirt, and most people abandon any kind of clothing other than the Speedo shorts so that you did not give your opponent an extra handle to hang on to. And Royce Gracie against Kimo way back when, Kimo just grabbed Royce's collar of his gi and just held him up and just kept throwing punches in there. Since then, I haven't seen too many people at all wear any kind of clothing but that Speedo. And it's interesting, I'm wondering why Takase is wearing the t-shirt. Oh, there's something.
Some head strikes to the midsection, which would not be considered a headbutt.
Well, you know, the headbutt rule. Yeah, the headbutt rule was to protect the head. It wasn't so much to keep you from using your head as a weapon to the midsection.
How much damage can one do to someone's midsection, though, with the head?
I think what that is, it's sort of like slapping the side of someone's head. It's not really an effective weapon. What it does do, though, is go ahead and force you to adjust because he's hitting you where you're breathing in the solar plexus. And nobody wants to just sit there and take that. You want to twist your hips, you want to move. So it looks like what Yamamoto is doing is trying to get Takase to adjust, and what he's trying to do is anticipate what adjustment he's going to make, take advantage of it.
So it's a setup move for something else,
More or
obviously.
less, yeah.
Right.
I don't think if it was a real
as
effective
opposed
weapon,
to a strike in which you would finish the match up.
there's no way that's going to finish the match unless you're absolutely lucky and really hit the solar plexus between breaths and knock the wind out of your opponent. Then he's in trouble.
10 seconds remains in round one, and again the same technique used by Kenichi Yamamoto, as this one was tied up right at the beginning of the matchup, and that is where round one is spent. On the backside of Takase as he utilized his guard fairly successfully, as Yamamoto really unable to strike Takase very much at all in the first round.
Well, except for those, couple of punches he threw in the first flurry and what would be classified as a head weapon of some sorts. I don't know if it's head-butting, because usually head-butting is against another person's head. An interesting tactic by Yamamoto, but I'm not sure how effective it actually is.
Once again, we are in Tokyo, Japan, UFC 23. Happy and thrilled once again to be working with our Japanese partners and to go global for the third time in UFC history. We had promised many great fights in 1999. We have delivered on that promise. There will be many changes upon the new millennium, and we'll look forward to bringing you the UFC for many years into the 21st century. Right now we are set for round number 2. Mario Yamasaki, once again the referee, as Yamamoto and Takase get set again. Oh! Kick, and he just missed.
But he also took a right hand that got thrown at the same time. A right leg to Yamamoto's head, a right hand to Takase's head, and it appears as though Yamamoto won that battle. It might have been because with the leg in the air, Takase's balance is very much at risk, and just the impact of the punch, even if it wasn't really a clean punch, would knock him down. But Takase's all there. Takase isn't stunned from that blow at all, but he likes it being on the ground. This is interesting. Takase, who says he likes to strike, wow, interesting way to pass that guard, and effective by Yamamoto, nearly takes Takase's back.
Trying to get the side mount, and Takase showing great flexibility.
Yeah, there's also size difference here. Did you see him just wing that leg over like nothing? I mean, that's the power of Yamamoto, who at 204 pounds is ripped.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Takase still being able to move the hips in the similar fashion to what you and Frank Shamrock showed us a couple of years ago.
No.
On an earlier UFC.
Frank showed everybody. I just happened to be there.
You just happened to be the I won't say the stunt, but I'll just say you were the stunt man, okay?
Thank you. That was a learning experience, and certainly I'd rather not learn from anybody but somebody like a Frank. Very genuine, very skilled, and really the heart of a champion.
And these two young men trying to establish themselves now on a different level, as even throughout the world and in Japan, the UFC still considered the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts.
Well, I'm very curious now to Yamamoto's response. There was a huge flurry at the start of the round. If he's the kind of athlete that does blow up, which is why he limited his activity in the first round, he's gassed and he's breathing hard, and that might be the reason for inactivity. But really, Takase is helpless here. All he's able to do is hang on to the wrists and wait to see what Yamamoto is going to do. He's not tried to reverse, and every time they've kind of scrambled on the ground, what he's always trying to do is keep Yamamoto between his legs so that those big strikes don't come and hit him. So I'm trying to figure here what Takase has in his arsenal to force the fight from this situation. If he's going to lay on his back like this, I'm not seeing how he's going to win the fight.
Well, there is a rule, and Mario Yamasaki is aware of it, that when we get into a position, a neutral position as you could consider this, and there is not activity, the fight can be brought back up to the feet. And if Yamamoto does not stay busy, he's in danger of that happening. But I don't know if that is advantage Yamamoto, disadvantage Takase, or the other way around.
If one was clearly more active than the other, and the other was trying to disengage and what we call timidity, then there would be a foul involved. But here, and under the round system, unless that really occurs, there's not going to be a stand-up. But what you're telling right now, what I'm looking at is both guys really aren't doing anything.
So, Blatz, to truly clarify, in the past system of UFC rules, when we did not have the rounds instituted into our matchups, there could possibly be a stand-up here. But now that we have the rounds, that's why we see the fight continue as it has.
Exactly. The round system and relieving the responsibility of the referee having to make a subjective decision as to when to stand them up. The round system relieved that. But what I really would like to see from these two, and granted, you know, I'm not the fighter in there, and maybe, you know, they're tired and maybe they're afraid to try something because of what the counter may be, but more activity here would really help. And they're making their UFC debut, so you got to understand there's nerves involved here too. Obviously, Takase's been in it before, but first time here in Japan in the UFC.
Just about a minute remains in round number 2. This fight slated for 3 5-minute rounds, and the winner will take on Katsuhisa Fuji, who has already won in matchup number 1, the tournament semifinal that you saw prior to this fight with an impressive knockout in the second round. 53 seconds now remaining in round 2.
Let's see if Yamamoto will try and flurry at the end of the round and perhaps influence the judges into giving him this round. It was a great flurry to start it all out, but boy, it's slowed down since then, and Yamamoto here really hasn't tried to improve his position. Takase continues to adjust and adjust and adjust, but giving up that size and what appears to be a dominant physical specimen, his opponent, he's having trouble really getting any kind of true offense going. It's all reacting to Yamamoto.
Again on the feet, Takase trying to land a spin kick. He went for the upper part of the body earlier at the beginning of round 2. Let's see if he tries to throw a punch here at the end. Knocked back down, but it really wasn't the strike that did it. He just was happy to get back down where he was more comfortable, and that is in a position to do the guard. Bell rings, round 2 is complete.
Takase, I don't think, wants to mix it up with Yamamoto on his feet. Quite frankly, that it seemed like that last blow occurred after the bell. But Takase is really challenged here. He's unable to do anything from his back to Yamamoto unless Yamamoto makes a big mistake. And on his feet, he clearly wants no part of exchanging strikes. So I'm not sure how Takase here really figures to bring offense into it. It looks as though he's trying to catch Yamamoto with some kind of finish.
Well, in Takase in '98, and I talked about it at the beginning of the fight, TKO'd super heavyweight Emmanuel Yarborough, who was weighing 550 pounds. So Takase's looking for that quick strike, if you will, at the beginning or the end. But once it goes down to the guard position, he knows he's got to keep his opponent in tight or he's in danger.
I guarantee you that fight with Yamamoto, the sumo wrestler, did not go down to the ground. Emmanuel's a huge man, and you don't want to be under him. You can't move.
Right.
It's my understanding he ran around him in circles to the point that Emmanuel either got so dizzy or so tired he was no longer able to function.
He goes for the high kick again. It's same situation as in round 2. Yamamoto ducks under the high kick, and then it goes down to the mat.
To give Takase credit there, what he again is looking for a big finish, a one-move knockout, a one-move submission. He's going to end up on his back anyway, so why try to eat a few punches striking with your hands when you can go for that home run with your legs, and if you miss it, you're going to be in a position as a fall-off, your best fall-off position, that is guard, and that is what he has done. What I really would like to see here is Yamamoto go ahead and try something here from the guard besides let Takase grab my wrists and I'm going to base out and not move. And unfortunately, that's the choice of tactic or strategy that he's going to employ here. I'm not sure if it's his full strategy, but it seems to be, because he has not in the previous 2 rounds really done anything.
There's a strike. Right hand punch, but it appears as if Takase is just fine.
He set it up with that head thing to the chest.
Eugene Jackson, Joe Slick, Jason DeLucia, Ki Yamahai, Pedro Rizzo, Tsuyoshi Kosaka, Kevin Randleman, Pete Williams still on the card tonight, competing here at UFC 23. 3 minutes, 40 seconds are between us and our first judge's decision of the night. Yumiki, Moriyami, and Fakasi are judges tonight.
Now, one thing a lot of jiu-jitsu people will do, and even rolling around people have done to me when I've tried to close my guard on them, is they will put the head into the solar plexus or stomach as a way of breaking the closed guard so that they have more room to maneuver. So it's actually creating maneuvering space. When the guard is closed, you have a lot less. If the guard opens, you have potential for a lot more. And that's why people go ahead and put the head in the chest or the belly to go ahead and do it. But this is the first time that I can think of in UFC history that somebody literally wanted to use the forehead as a form of a strike to the belly and chest area. And that eerie quiet, it's just so hard to get used to. And here I'd almost have to, if I'm watching this fight thinking, you know, how would I be looking at it? You know, I would think that Yamamoto here would be the one that needs to start to move, and he's doing very little to initiate any kind of movement. And if he feels he's winning, I can understand why. But it'll be interesting to see how these Japanese judges look at this fight and score it. Takedowns go to Yamamoto, maybe one, but most of the others were just off balances from strikes by Takase.
And it isn't as if Takase wants to totally avoid being taken down. I mean, he seems to be comfortable in his guard, and Yamamoto has not been able to do any damage within the guard of Takase, who's very well versed in jiu-jitsu.
Literally, you can count how many strikes have been thrown by each fighter, and when you're talking about, you know, landing 10 strikes to an opponent's 5 or 6, is that a clear and defined way of assessing around? And in the rules it says effective, meaning they scored, and they scored with effectiveness. It's not just how many you hit, it's how effective were the punches, and you only really want to score the ones that were effective, not total number. So it becomes very difficult. There's been so few here that there's no real lasting memory of one really, you know, dominating or hurting the other.
Wow, there we go again. Yep.
Guard and
trying to jump into the guard again.
And here Yamamoto again is starting to work a little bit, grabbing legs, but once again falling into the guard. This is the most energy he's put out.
Yeah, trying to be much more active here is Yamamoto.
Rallying late, and maybe because, again, he blows up when he does those kinds of flurries. Let's see if he'll start to move from here right now.
The crowd reacts for perhaps the first time in the matchup.
Well, they don't want to see it end up here in the guard. They like the fact that he took risks, that he got up, that he moved all around. That's what the fans love. Let's see action. Let's not just see basing out and waiting for the clock to run out. I don't mean to be critical. These two are certainly going out here and putting it out, but I would think even the fans are saying they want more action.
31 seconds remains in the matchup between these two fighters, Takase and Yamamoto. The winner to take on Fuji in the tournament final later tonight. 17 seconds now. Striking from the guard is Takase.
He's got to be careful with that elbow. No striking to the back of the head with the elbow, and that rule does carry over here to the UFCJ tournament.
Final 5 seconds now.
And it looks as though this is the way it's going to end.
So we will render a judge's decision, and the 3 Japanese judges will be forced to give us a winner. And our second fight of the night.
That was maybe 3 total flurries in the first round near the end, at the start of the second. And then that looked like the start of the second right there, that big right hand along with the kick by Takase, and Takase wound up on the ground. And Yamamoto here looked for his openings, tried to pass the potential guard of Takase, but in the end it would be Takase always able, and look at him get away from those heels. He wanted no part of getting struck by a foot there and a kick by Takase. Let's see how the judges looked at this, Mike.
First judge gives it to Yamamoto. Second judge Yamamoto. A unanimous decision for Kenichi Yamamoto, and he will fight in our tournament final against Fuji.
And coming up, here's a rising star in the UFC. His name, Eugene Jackson. Powerful, quick, and strong.
Let's check in backstage with our own James Hormy.
Thank you very much, Mike and Jeff. I am joined by UFC matchmaker John Peretti. John, we're a few fights into the show. We're coming up on the Americans. We're going to see Eugene Jackson taking on Yamamiya. We know Eugene can strike. He's already got 1 KO in the UFC. We don't know much about Yamamiya. How do you see that fight going?
Yamamiya is a really good boxer. Eugene is not a really good boxer. He's a banger. Yamamiya has the ability to cause submissions at any time. Eugene trains with Tim Lasik. He's well prepared. He's done a great job in the past. I think we're going to see a tremendous fight, maybe a more technical fight. Maybe Eugene will have to lure him in. Maybe the Japanese audience might not appreciate that, but he might have to lure him in to be able to counterpunch. See it great.
The next fight's going to be another interesting one. Newcomer Joe Slick, who fights with Pat Miletich, or trains with Pat Miletich, that is. He's going to take on Jason DeLucia, who is back from the early days of the UFC. Certainly things have changed. He's been doing a lot of pancrase. Can DeLucia fight with a closed fist in the big leagues?
Well, I hope so. He's changed a lot. You know, pancrase gives him the opportunity to do submissions constantly. The leg lock business is really the Japanese business, and DeLucia is a mimic. He can take anybody on in submissions. Can he fight an aggressive, young newcomer with Pat Miletich in the background? I'm not sure. This kid, Joe Slick, can bang. He can bang with both hands, as can all in the Miletich camp.
John Peretti, our matchmaker. We look forward to all those fights. Back to you guys in the booth.
All right, Worm, thank you very much. And the first of our two middleweight matchups on the card tonight features Eugene Jackson, the American, against the Japanese fighter Ki Yamamiya. 27 years old, born here in Japan. He belongs to a pancrase gym and a student at a local university. He won his first championship in pancrase, the Neo Blood Tournament, in 1997. He is an impressive striker.
Yes, he is, and John Peretti mentioned his boxing skills, and there you see that left open hand to Jason DeLucia knocking him down, but it was Eugene Jackson in this match against Royce Alger. Alger, a tremendous freestyle wrestler, almost Olympic team, and Eugene Jackson kept him from ever taking him down and delivered those solid strikes.
Well, one thing we know is this is a solid competitor right here. Eugene Jackson, undefeated in his UFC career, is nicknamed the Wolf. And, of course, his training partner, Tim Lasik, also his best friend. And conditioning will not be a concern of the very confident Eugene Jackson at 33 years old, 5'8", and 195 pounds. We loved the debut of Jackson, who took advantage of Royce the Farmer Alger in Iowa. And now he has a chance to beat a Japanese fighter right here in Tokyo.
Look at that. He is a physical specimen. He is a rising star in the UFC middleweight picture. And a win here against Yamamiya certainly is only going to add to Jackson's credentials as he keeps marching forward.
Well, here is Yamamiya making his way to the Octagon for the first time. And Yamamiya at 6 foot 191 pounds. So this being a middleweight matchup where we will not see a size factor or a differential that we saw in our tournament.
Looking at the two fighters, you would say Eugene Jackson looks more muscular, a little bit thicker. But you're right, they're both middleweights here. It'll be very interesting to see exactly what Yamamiya can bring in with a closed fist. And we heard John Peretti allude to maybe Jackson's got to bring him in and be a counterpuncher.
Yamamiya is 6 years younger, and Jackson is 3 inches shorter. The official weights come in at about an 8-pound differential, so we are getting set for Jackson and Yamamiya. Of course, Eugene Jackson's punching power is something that has already been well documented.
And Peretti said he's a banger, and that's the best way to do it. He's not the cleanest of punches, but what he hits you with has power. It'll be interesting to see how Yamamiya looks at Jackson in terms of a target and how he's going to approach it. Is he going to box? Is he going to jab? Or is he going to come out swinging?
And Yamamiya, 27 years old, out of Japan. And he has the strengths of being the pancrase fighter. His strikes come in flurries. His endurance also has been tested in the past and has checked out very well.
Well, that could mean it's going to go the entire distance. Of course, Jackson also a very powerful puncher, but he's got great takedown defense. And probably his best natural asset, his brute power.
Yamamiya, the southpaw, against the right-handed fighting Eugene Jackson. And a regular inside the Octagon will be our official for the rest of the night. Our referee, Big John McCarthy, making the trip to Japan from his home in the western United States. So Big John will be in charge of the two middleweight fights, our tournament final, and then the two heavyweight fights still ahead on the card this evening, including the heavyweight championship. That's still ahead. Right now, Eugene Jackson is set. Yamamiya is set, and we are underway with the middleweight fight. Our first of two here tonight at UFC 23.
Yamamiya is in the southpaw stance. Look for Jackson to try to keep his left foot outside of the lead leg of Yamamiya, and that keeps him out of the power zone of that big left hand. Should also circle to that direction as well.
Now, Jackson noted and the pre-fight interviews that he has worked against some southpaws in his training to try to adjust to the difference that you get when everything is, if you will, turned around.
And that's exactly what it is. You're so used to fighting a right-hander that when somebody comes in this opposite stance and has the power in what normally is the jab hand, it can cause problems for righties, and that's why so many of them, when fighting southpaws, do so for months with sparring partners just to retrain their reflexes.
Jackson 9-2 overall in mixed martial arts. He has fought in pancrase-style matches before, and he is 5-2 there, training at the Gladiator Training Academy, a mixed martial arts gym where one discipline does not reign. And he and Lasik are truly students of this fight game, and two, I believe, of the up-and-comers in the UFC. The left connected. So the first punch thrown by Yamamiya, and it glances off the right ear of Eugene Jackson.
Jackson is not stepping forward to throw punches. He's waiting. It looks as though he is going to try and counter. There was his first attempt. It was off of one of Yamamiya's jabs, and Yamamiya appears to be playing it like a boxer, leading with the jab hand and then trying to finish up with the 1-2.
Well, certainly there is a reach advantage for Yamamiya, with Jackson being just 5'8" and Yamamiya being 5'11", 6 foot. And so that is one thing that Jackson will try to work, is in the close quarters. That's where he can get his shots in. Again, the left.
Jackson, when he's coming in, is staying inside of that lead leg, putting him in the zone for that left hand. He needs to try to circle outside, or at least place his lead leg on the outside. And in the way it's appearing here on your TV screen, would be closer to you, the viewer. As long as he stays,
Got hit with that one.
Well, he also tripped there. He tripped there. Yeah, the punch scored, but I don't think it was a knockout punch at all. I don't think it stunned him very much. Jackson right back up, and now they're in an upper body tie, classic Greco-Roman style positioning. Potential for body shots and knees here. Each of them hiding their head so that a knee can't come up and catch him. And it's so interesting, you can hear the corners. You can hear the corners. Tim Lasik trying to coach Eugene Jackson there.
Well, there is certainly a feeling of loneliness when you are one of the American fighters fighting against a Japanese fighter on their turf, if you will. And I remember fighters the first time we came to Japan back in December of 1997 talking about feeling like they were on the island and the whole fight world was against them. So the relationship of Lasik and Jackson certainly plays a major part in not only the preparation, but the fight itself here tonight.
Absolutely.
3 5-minute rounds again here in our middleweight fights. In our first heavyweight fight, that will depend or tell us who will be our one contender, the top contender. And then the heavyweight championship will be 5 5-minute rounds. 1:14 remains here in round number 1 between Jackson and Yamamiya.
You can see Jackson loading up. I mean, he's got all the weight on his back foot. He's leaning back in his stance, trying to load up with the punch, waiting for Yamamiya to come within range.
Yamamiya's got good quickness, Jeff.
And I give Peretti some credit here. He spelled it out exactly. He said that Jackson has to lure Yamamiya in so that he can go ahead and connect with the punching, and that's exactly what Eugene Jackson is doing. You can see he's a little bit over his front foot here, but as he rocks that step back, you see him, that trail leg keeps setting, and each time it sets, you can see him coiling, and he leans back on it, and you know he's coming forward.
Yamamiya sure is trying to size things up, and he really has that distance factor zeroed in on now, because Jackson is thrown. Now he goes high with the kick, but Yamamiya is able to step back and avoid any damage.
Good tactic, though. It makes Yamamiya think of something else on the way in. But to his credit, Yamamiya is feeling with the jab, and each time he comes in that inch, two more, you know, left hand of Jackson, it didn't even phase him. That was the power hand of Yamamiya connecting, and it didn't even seem to rock Jackson at all.
Jackson tried to go with a straight kick that time. Up and underneath, almost like an uppercut punch. And round 1 comes to a close, and a show of respect as always between our two game competitors.
Fairly even round. I have no idea. Very relaxed Jackson, laughing right there. Let's see if we can hear Tim Lasik. There in the other corner, Yamamiya getting coaching there. some of the earlier action, that right hand. And there you see that left hand, it seemed on the button on Jackson's chin and it didn't do anything. And Jackson looked like he tried a right leg kick and just happened to trip on it, and that's why he went down. But that's the second time, because of slow motion, we got to see a left hand land. That's the power hand, and Jackson wasn't even stunned. He didn't even back away. So I wonder what kind of power Yamamiya truly has in taking out Jackson. Jackson may now become a little more brazen and close the distance himself.
We are at the Tokyo Bay NK Hall in Tokyo, Japan. Mike Goldberg, Jeff Blatnick, James Wormy, happy to be with you here. UFC 23, start of round number 2 of our first of 2 middleweight fights. They tap off in respect, sizing each other up. This one has not really gone to the mat yet, other than, as you said, the slip by Eugene Jackson.
And that was off an attempted kick. I don't think that was a takedown of any sorts, and Yamamiya couldn't even keep him down. He was back up on his feet and engaging him so quickly. I would have to call that first round a draw. I don't think anybody did anything enough to warrant winning the round.
You can hear Lasik again. Keep the right hand up.
And obviously that's to protect from the big left hand coming in from that side. But he did say hit him with the hook. And that's because that's a lazy jab out there that Yamamiya is putting out.
These two competitors happy at this point, through about 6 minutes of competition, to try to go toe-to-toe.
It seemed as though Jackson right there was almost going to start to move forward, but now he's gone back to the standstill and seems to be loading up on that right leg. Oh, right hand by Jackson. Another
Oh,
right
a big
hand.
one. Jackson trying to close it out.
They're trading. Now this is where conditioning starts to come in. Big flurry. Big flurry, they acknowledge it. They acknowledge it, but that burns energy.
I really like Eugene Jackson's style. And you know what? Give that same credit to Yamamiya. They're loving what they're doing, and this is their passion.
And it's actually a big chess match, and that is why they smile at each other. They're so involved in the moves that they're doing, the techniques, that they're not thinking about their opponent. They're thinking about their performance. And when they come out of it, they're respectful because each was able to land.
I remember last competition that Lasik was in. Eugene Jackson was there. We were in Louisiana, good flurry, and you and I were both talking to them about this UFC game, if you will. And you stopped at one point and said, you guys could talk this all day long, couldn't you? I think Eugene Jackson's reply was, yeah, probably all day and all night. And you could see by the reaction after the flurry a few moments ago, the joy there on a big right hand.
He got
another punch delivered. He has stunned his opponent.
That first right hand, there seemed to be a step in which Yamamiya needed to catch himself. He's all there again, but certainly that flurry was all Eugene Jackson. That's the first dominant flurry we've really seen, one-sided.
Jackson got a little kick down on the ankle, the right ankle of Yamamiya, to set up that big right hand, and there is some blood, it appears, coming from the nose of Yamamiya. Yamamiya and Jackson, 2:15 remaining in round 2.
Jackson's punching now seems to be stronger than Yamamiya's, and here conditioning, once again, the ability to move and the ability not to hesitate. Fatigue makes cowards of us all, and if you're tired, you will hesitate in initiating your offense. Jackson appears very strong. He's not pressing it, though. He's not pressing it. And again, you can see the placement of that foot there. When he stepped, he went outside. That helps take away that power punch of Yamamiya. But if he stays inside that leg with his lead foot, he's in that zone.
Now, Yamamiya certainly, on paper, based on past experience, would have the edge in his submission ability. That doesn't mean that Jackson can't be effective in grappling, though.
Oh, Tim Lasik, I'm sure, is a great teacher. He displayed in his UFC debut and second match good ground skill. He's also a competent striker. He, too, has some quick hands and feet. So I think Jackson has the ground game thought of, prepared for it. But certainly I think he feels very comfortable going toe-to-toe with Yamamiya here. And certainly he's been hit on the button 2-3 times by that left hand. It didn't even faze him, where that one flurry, it appeared as though Yamamiya may have been just momentarily stunned. But this is not where Jackson wants to be, giving up inside position underhooks, his back up against the octagon fence. He'd rather be the other way around and make what appears to be a less physically developed fighter in Yamamiya compared to Jackson, dictating action. Why can't Yamamiya here be pushed up against the fence? Jackson doing like this. There, that was effective scoring, good body shots.
Yamamiya and Jackson. 15 seconds remains in round 2.
Some funky shorts by Yamamiya, half camouflage, half bright.
And the bell sounds, and the end of 10 minutes of our 15 minutes of allotted time here in middleweight fight number 1. Now keep in mind the middleweight division all of a sudden has some holes in it. Boss Rutan coming down to fight as a middleweight. He, of course, wants our champion Frank Shamrock, but I think Eugene Jackson, and from what we've seen so far, Yamamiya can be factors in the middleweight division.
And looking at you're right. Looking at the replay, though, of that Eugene Jackson right there, though, you could see that Yamamiya was stunned by that right hand. And you're correct. That middleweight position, because the champion, Frank, relinquished his belt, and he's going to pursue some other opportunities, he feels. I sure hope comes back to the Octagon. Certainly opens the door for some other contenders to become title hopefuls. Tito Ortiz is in there, certainly Boss Rutan coming down from heavyweight and being the heavyweight champion. He's in the picture. The question, who else is coming in?
Well, and there are also Lions Den fighters in the middleweight division who may be heard from again in the future. Of course, we'll see Pete Williams, Lions Den fighter in the heavyweight championship. Still ahead tonight here on UFC 23. Third and final round between Jackson and Yamamiya.
Woo, big left hand just missed Jackson.
This one may end on one punch.
It's starting to look as though Yamamiya is pressing. If he starts moving into Eugene Jackson, that's exactly what Jackson wants. Jackson wants to stand upright and throw punches. And conditioning, I believe, is Eugene Jackson. With that added power that he has and his ability in terms of speed, I really think at this point, the way the fight is looking, that Jackson's physical talents can start to really shine through.
Now, Jackson has always said that he feels he never wants to not leave everything in the ring, and it certainly appears as that will be the case again here tonight. And talking to Eugene Jackson, he's a young man who still carries a full-time job and does not have the benefit of some of our other American fighters to train exclusively. And Eugene Jackson has said in the past, man, if I had the ability to do what Frank Shamrock has done, and he says it with respect, I could even be better than how I feel I have performed so far.
It's not always the fight in the octagon that determines the fighter. It's what he has to do to make his dream come true. And if you love what you're doing, you're willing to sacrifice. And Eugene Jackson is a disciplined athlete, and he's disciplined in the way he controls his life so that he does have the opportunity to compete here in the UFC. Who knows, with some more success, he may be in the same position as Frank Shamrock, where he can train full-time.
Yamamiya is set. Looks like he may have lost a mouthpiece or something. But everything is clear, and they're set to go with just over 3 minutes remaining now in the third and final round.
I gave that second round to Eugene Jackson, particularly because of the power of that one right hand, that one flurry in which he clearly dominated the flurry. And so I have him technically leading the fight close. Yamamiya now has Jackson up against the fence. Position for kneeing here. And Yamamiya unable to capitalize. Standing again. Tim Lasik saying right hand right now, and it hit him. Glancing blow, not full power punch, but seemed to work. Another left hand, but he's unable to do anything to Eugene Jackson.
Now a quick spin and a combination thrown by Eugene Jackson. It's interesting too because both corners can throw out instructions, and with the inability to speak English for the one fighter, Japanese for the other, it's not as if he's setting someone up for something that Yamamiya can understand what perhaps Eugene Jackson is getting set up to do by his corner, Tim Lasik, in this particular case.
A left hand did it again. And out of nowhere, right at the bell, that's going to end it. They're going to end the fight right there. Good Lord, what a left hand by Eugene Jackson out of nowhere. Second time tonight we've seen it, would seem like a very predictable approach by both fighters. Suddenly, one big blow leaks through and it's over.
Now, Jeff, I had said earlier that this looked like the type of fight that could end on one punch. And in the same way that Jackson defeated Royce Alger, he defeats Yamamiya here tonight. Now, you heard the bell ring. That signified the knockout, not the end of the time duration, because there was some time left.
That is correct. That was to signify to the crowd. And there in that slow motion, both fighters threw punches. Yamamiya with that left hand coming first, but it was Jackson's left hand that did the big damage. It landed right on the button of the same kind of hook that took out Royce Alger.
So Yamamiya goes down, and Jackson is 2-0 in the UFC. As always, the ultimate concern is of the safety of our fighters, and Yamamiya looks just fine, and a game opponent and Eugene Jackson comes and makes sure that Yamamiya is good. But talk about good. I mean, this young man is an up-and-coming star in the middleweight division.
And Jeremy Horn's another guy in there in that middleweight division. Eugene Jackson's star just rose a little bit higher. We're seeing some young lions now in the UFC strutting their stuff.
Now, certainly the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts, and undefeated in Super Bowl competition, is Eugene Jackson, with the knockout credited in round 3 at 3 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yeah, there's some athletes you want to see win, and Eugene Jackson, if you ever get a chance to talk with him, get to know him, he's one of those kind of people.
The ultimate show of respect, not only to his opponent, but to the crowd here in Tokyo, Japan, at the NK Hall in Tokyo Bay.
Just awesome how you can see one punch ending a fight, one slight mistake, and hey, Jackson got Yamamiya to go ahead and come in and try to throw a big power blow, and as he stepped forward, Jackson responded with that beautiful left hook.
So Jackson, the first American to fight here tonight in Tokyo, is victorious. He's now backstage with our James Wormy.
Thank you very much, Mike and Jeff. Eugene Jackson, big victory, 2-0 in the Octagon, 2 knockouts in the Octagon.
It just happened that way. Yamamiya is a hard opponent. You saw I had to use a strong game plan against him, and I had to be very wary of his left, because every time I tried to commit, you see he was bombing back. Very tough.
Not much groundwork during the whole fight, Eugene. Was it your idea to keep the fight on the standing position?
I'm not going to come to Japan and fight them on the ground. They'll kill me. So I'd rather stand up.
Okay. 2-0 in the Octagon. Future looks bright. What are your aspirations here in the UFC?
Hopefully we get some sponsors, me and Tim, so we can quit working 12 hours a day trying to train, and then we can become full-time fighters like a lot of the other people, and maybe our game will arise.
Tim Lachek, UFC veteran in his own right. Tim, what do you think of this guy?
I'm just happy to be his friend. You know, foremost, that's the main thing. He's a heck of a competitor. I mean, you saw. I mean, his actions speak louder than anything I could say. So.
We're all the way over here in Japan. Anything to say back to the fans in East Palo Alto, California?
Yeah, I want to say hi to Kana. I want to say hi to Inger. Thanks for letting Tim come over here cooking for us. I want to say hi to Nico, Casey, and April. Gladiators, we love you, and we're coming home. And, hey, everybody's got to come to Japan. It's a beautiful place.
Eugene Jackson, 2-0 in the Octagon. Another big win tonight. Back to you guys in the booth.
Worm, thank you very much, and a great smile on the face of Eugene Jackson, a winner here tonight in Tokyo. Now, still ahead, the heavyweight championship. Will it belong to the Lion's Den? And that man, Pete Williams, who will take on Kevin Randleman. And getting loose backstage, Tsuyoshi Kosaka with his training partner Maurice Smith. Kosaka will fight Brazilian champion Pedro Rizzo. But right now, a middleweight matchup, our second of our 2 middleweight fights tonight between Joe Slick out of Davenport, Iowa, and the Pat Miletich camp, and Jason DeLucia from Bellingham, Massachusetts. DeLucia debuted all the way back at UFC 1.
And he had a couple victories, but his most notable fight in the Octagon, a loss to Royce Gracie by submission. You can see there he strikes with open hands coming from Pancrase. Joe Slick, he is a newcomer. He's a rookie in the Octagon, but he too brings good submission skills. You see him there taking his opponent's back, rear naked choke, and he's very well versed in other submissions, good takedowns, a grappler overall.
Well, Joe Slick, a newcomer to the Octagon, but a very disciplined and experienced fighter. 13-2-3, his mixed martial arts record. And you know that if he trains with Pat Miletich, born in Iowa City, fighting out of Davenport, that he's had a good variety of his training in the past couple of years. He's comprised of a jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and boxing background and looks forward to his UFC debut tonight.
And he clearly stated in his interview that he really thinks that DeLucia has some pretty good stand-up skills. He might be better off going to the ground. We saw the footage of him being on the ground. I'm betting that that's probably where he's most comfortable. Look for him to try to bring the fight there.
So Joe Slick is set for his UFC debut against Jason DeLucia. And this is almost a debut all over again when you consider it's been over 5 years since we saw him fight Royce Gracie inside the Octagon. Interesting sidebar, he did do some training in his past with Ken Shamrock after the first UFC. He's evolved into a more complete fighter, and over the past couple of years, he's been a favorite in Japan, fighting in the Pancrase organization on many different occasions.
Certainly has experience on the ground. Look for him to continue that pattern as well because of his Pancrase background. I'm not sure how good of a striker he is on his feet, and it'll be interesting to see the tactic that each fighter decides to employ at the very beginning.
So the tale of the tape between Jason DeLucia and Joe Slick shows DeLucia 8 years older than Slick, and it's shorter. This is a middleweight matchup where weight is of no concern or no difference. 199 and 198 at the time of the weigh-in. Joe Slick, Jason DeLucia. Slick, a good grappler, well-versed in submissions, and you like his takedown ability.
Well, certainly if you have that advantage on your side, which most wrestlers have, it dictates where you want to place the fight, standing or on the field. Excuse me, on the ground. And there's the introduction of Joe Slick.
And how about Jason DeLucia, the middleweight out of Bellingham, Massachusetts?
He's got a wealth of experience. That 8 years that he has on Slick, he's been fighting most of that time. Coming from Pancrase, open striking, but tremendous groundwork. And they claim he's a versatile striker, so let's see how he approaches the start of this fight. Will he want to keep it on his feet, use his kicks and elbows and hands, or is he too going to look to think that he's better on the ground at submissions and both want to go down there and it ends up there?
2-1 overall in the UFC, going back to those fights we mentioned earlier in UFC 1, where he won a couple of fights and then lost to our first ever champion, Royce Gracie. Our referee again, Big John McCarthy, is just about set to get this middleweight matchup underway.
It's so eerie. You keep thinking with the anticipation of the fight to start, everything would be at a height, and that's when the Japanese get the quietest. Listen to that. You can almost hear their feet moving. DeLucia, the southpaw. Let's see how Slick approaches him on his feet. He should be circling the other way. You want to stay away from the power hand. The distance is so great here, nothing really matters. It's going to be in and out.
Oh, a left.
And a bear hug right away. Arm trap by Slick. Follows through with a trip. Wizard position. Step over Wizard. This is almost classic wrestling. Almost took his back, and now DeLucia puts the guard on Joe Slick. Now we'll get to see who's the better ground man. Past the guard quickly. Slick in a position here now to go ahead and mount. He's side mounted, but many people like to strike from here so that you're not caught over the body. Couple knees to the side of the head.
Now coming in, Slick certainly felt like it would be to his advantage on the ground. That's more of his game. He knows he's very experienced in this position, but now DeLucia works it back up.
Had a momentary chance at a guillotine choke there, was unable to bring it in, but same position now, body lock position. This is where he dominated DeLucia right away. Same thing again. Oh, injury. Oh, we got an injury. Looks like it's his knee. It's the knee that was tripped. Towel thrown in. The fight's over. Fight's over. It was a body lock position, as we say in wrestling. He used a left-hand trip, and it appeared that the leg that he tripped buckled. And DeLucia's right knee, it seemed like he was grabbing his right knee, is hurt.
So Joe Slick will be the winner, as due to the injury to Jason DeLucia, his corner forced to throw in the towel.
Oh, I want to see this again. I mean, DeLucia is in excruciating pain here. He's grabbing onto his management team. Somehow, as the bodies fell, that knee became vulnerable. It got twisted up somehow, and he injured it.
Just a freak, really.
It wasn't a submission lock or anything. It was just the way that the knee buckled under the trip. He must have been trying to keep on his feet at all cost, and then the joint just could not hold the pressure of two bodies going down. And it was very obvious. He screamed right away. I mean, certainly we hope that the knee is all right, but your winner is going to be Joe Slick by injury default.
So Slick victorious in his UFC debut, but he wins as Jason DeLucia gets injured. And here on the replay, let's see if we can see what happened.
Well, he used a bear hug trip to knock DeLucia down early in the fight. He comes back to it. Tried the trip, didn't work, so he lifts him and tries to twist him down, and as DeLucia's foot hits, that's his black shoe on the mat, you can see how sideways, perpendicular it was to the direction his body was falling. That put tremendous torque on the medial side of his knee, injuring it.
Now a disappointing finish. Let's check backstage. Worm has our winner.
Thank you very much, guys. Here with Joe Slick. Joe, pretty good debut, 1-0 in the Octagon.
Thanks. I was pretty nervous coming in, but once you get in there, a fight's a fight, no matter who you're fighting for.
What happened out there? It was kind of a bizarre finish. What exactly happened?
I don't know. We worked our way back up to our feet, and I had a body lock, picked him up, dumped him over, and his knee twisted somehow. Looks like he's hurt pretty bad. I hope he's all right.
Talk about training with Pat Miletich in Iowa and all those guys out there. How has that helped you in your mixed martial arts career?
Oh, it's helped tons. I think training with Pat and Jeremy Horn is pretty much the best guys you can train with. You know.
I want to know in the Octagon, what are your hopes for the future with the UFC?
I hope to fight as many times as they let me fight, and I'll keep training and give it all I got every time I'm out there.
Joe Slick, first time in the Octagon, 1-0. Can't beat that. Back to you guys.
So far on a great night in Tokyo, 4 fights in the books, and in my estimation, Eugene Jackson, the most impressive of our fighters we have seen so far. But still ahead, the tournament championship and our heavyweight matchups.
It'll be Fuji against Yamamoto for the tournament championship. Our first heavyweight bout will be Pedro Rizzo against Tsuyoshi Kosaka. And then the heavyweight title match, Kevin Randleman versus Pete Williams. And if Williams wins, it's the first time a Lion's Den fighter has brought a belt home since Ken Shamrock.
Kevin Randleman thinks he should already have a belt. The controversial decision and his last entrance into the Octagon against Boss Rutten. Well, you, our fans, have chosen the top 3 fights that you would like to see as part of Ultimate New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1999. Amongst the top 3 fights, Tito Ortiz against Frank Shamrock, Eugene Jackson and Royce Alger, Maurice Smith and Mark Coleman, the fight that many still believe is the greatest fight in UFC history. Also chosen at random, 5 of our very loyal fans will soon be getting an early Christmas gift. Some UFC merchandise will be sent out to Chris Newdorf, David Lafreniere, Fabio Santos, Eduardo Chanique, and Joel Dutzer. And I know all 5 of you gentlemen will take part in the viewing of Ultimate New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1999. Contact your local cable operator or satellite provider for our last show of the millennium, and then we begin the next millennium, the year 2000. We will be back with you on February 4th for UFC 24. As always, for the latest on the world of mixed martial arts, log on daily at SEG.com. And if you prefer a little bit of entertainment to go along with your daily fight news, the website of choice, eYada.com. Still ahead, that man fights for the UFC heavyweight title. Kevin Randleman takes on Pete Williams out of the Lion's Den. But prior to that, the tournament final here at UFC-J. And it should be a good one between Yamamoto and Fuji. Yamamoto, a winner by unanimous decision. Fuji with the TKO in the first fight of the night over Yano, the 24-year-old, also a Japanese fighter. Fuji will enter the Octagon first, and this young man displays a lot of energy. In fact, he has no delay in working his way into the Octagon.
Well, he seems prepared, and he seems to want to be in there to display his skills, and he did so in the first fight. Great striking skills in terms of punching. He was taken down by Yano, but he had a good guard. Yano was unable to do anything on the ground with him. And when he had the opportunity on his feet, he has the killer instinct, the ability to put a man away.
Katsuhisa Fuji will take on a very confident fighter in Kenichi Yamamoto. And certainly it does not appear as if nerves are a factor and this very, shall we say, confident young man.
I'm not sure what he's doing here, as opposed to Fuji, who couldn't wait to get in. It seems as though Yamamoto is willing to take his time and let people see him in a hooded coat. But Yamamoto did win his first fight, and maybe the reason why he didn't display all the skills he may possess is because it is a tournament. And it's been a while since we've done a tournament here at the UFC, and one of the big things is survivability. I got to get through the first fight healthy in order to be able to fight in the second fight. Perhaps that's why we saw Yamamoto not really go after that victory with any kind of real flurry. It seemed like it was a close fight. He did win it. However, we didn't see a lot out of him, and maybe we will now because it's the final.
You know, it's interesting, too, because in the past, in our tournament format, we have seen some impressive opening tournament-type victories in which the fighter was unable to continue due to a lack of stamina, due to dehydration, due to perhaps an injury. This is not the case with these two fighters, Fuji and Yamamoto. Neither seems any worse for the wear as they get set up for this tournament final. The tail of the tape between the freestyle fighter and the shoot fighter. 4 years different and a size advantage once again here to Fuji of about 15 pounds, but a different size advantage than was dictated in the fight between Yamamoto and Daiju Takase.
I truly believe that, that 15 pounds or so that Fuji has on Yamamoto really is of no consequence. These two are pretty equally sized, and they appear to be equally matched up. It'll be interesting to see if Yamamoto finally opens up or if he's going to continue that methodical style.
Our Japanese announcer with the introductions of our fighters who will take part in this tournament final, and then the two heavyweight matchups will complete our night here in Tokyo Bay NK Hall in Tokyo, Japan. Kenichi Yamamoto, 23 years old, as I mentioned earlier, born in Osaka, his second match now since leaving the rings, and his second match on the card here this evening. And refereeing this matchup, Big John McCarthy, who will work the remainder of the fights on the card here this evening. So here we go. The tournament final between Yamamoto, and boom, Yamamoto goes down.
And Yamamoto did something he didn't do in the first fight. He came out headhunting for Fuji, threw a wild punch, and Fuji was underneath him, picked him up, dropped him down, and he's in a half guard. Now he's in a closed guard, and let's see what Yamamoto can do to the ground, and it appears that's exactly what Yamamoto did. He waited to see and hold back, all the skills that he could, and not show his hand to Fuji before he had to.
Yamamoto, with the size advantage that he had on Takase, as we look at it now in a bit of retrospect, Jeff, may have been doing exactly what you said. It's almost like the analogy of an NFL team not showing their whole offense in the preseason, knowing that tapes are abundant throughout the National Football League. He also had, I think, the mental advantage knowing that he had outsized his opponent Takase by such a great differential that his confidence was at an all-time high.
And he didn't burn up lots of energy to overkill a victory. He did what he needed to do. He won the fight. He conserved energy, and he didn't show his hand. A smart tactic.
Well, smart it would appear right now. We'll see as this fight continues if indeed that was the mindset of one Kenichi Yamamoto. This tournament final will be as all the fights except our championship one have been tonight, with the 3 rounds of 5 minutes each. And then if it does go the distance, Williams and Randleman will fight for 5 5-minute rounds. Just underway here in our tournament final. Mike Goldberg, Jeff Blatnick, James Wormy, our crew from SEG Sports. Happy to bring you UFC 23.
Fuji attempting some ground and pound tactic here. No submission attempt yet by Yamamoto, but Fuji fairly active here in the guard, attempting some strikes.
Now you see the subtle difference in the guard here. It's not the close guard, it's more of the open guard with the heels hooked, if you will, or at least the heels on the side of his opponent, a la the TK guard.
And exactly, and the reason the feet are there is if Fuji raises up, Yamamoto's going to help raise him up even more, get him way up in the air, possibly reverse him. Fuji now striking down. Attempted armbar, Fuji aware of it. Nice up by Yamamoto. Good escape, get to his feet. But Fuji now seems like he has found something. He's starting to become very active, throwing strikes from within Yamamoto's guard. Couple of takedowns also here for Fuji now in this round.
Now, in working with our Japanese partners here in Tokyo, this is a very special night for the Japanese fighters who have been featured in their UFC debuts. And certainly, I would guess as it is when we talk to most of the Japanese fighters, Fuji, Yamamoto have the dreams of coming and fighting and continuing in the UFC and having the opportunity in the future to fight stateside or wherever else our events in the next millennium could take place.
Well, we know we've had some athletes from Brazil whose big dream was to make it to the United States and fight in the States in the UFC, and they were able to do it. Certainly here in Japan, that feeling is in all of the athletes that enter the Octagon here as well. Fuji being able to rack up some points. Action slowing now as Yamamoto ties Fuji up. Those legs coming up very high when he's looking for a submission. And one thing Yamamoto did here was he was being driven into the fence, and he turned himself towards the center of the Octagon, and that allows his head room to maneuver, his body room to maneuver, so that he's not pinned up against the fence and is a stationary target. Fuji now scoring with strikes again. Front headlock position, as we call it here in wrestling, with your opponent underneath. He can also knee here. No attempt at a knee yet. A couple of good strikes again, and Fuji standing right in front of Yamamoto. I've got to believe that Yamamoto does burn up. Submission attempt again by Yamamoto, going after the leg and ankle.
Well, the left eye now of Yamamoto is cut. There is a cut on the left eye of Kenichi Yamamoto, and Fuji has just continuously flurried with punches that are landing, and he continues to land right hands and work inside the guard of Yamamoto. Left, right, continuing to battle, and Yamamoto trying to pull down his opponent. But Yamamoto is in trouble here in round one, as Fuji continues his onslaught and decisively wins the first 5 minutes of competition.
I would have to agree with you 100%. Without a doubt, that round should go to Fuji. Very active from within his opponent's guard. Multiple strikes, continuous strikes, dictating the pace, octagon control, a couple of takedowns. He did it all in that first round.
So Fuji, of our tournament competitors, overall the most impressive thus far here this evening. I mean, he just continuously works and works and works.
He was actually hitting him before Yamamoto even got to that position of cover-up. He went to cover-up because he was getting struck. So here was a flurry of maybe 10, 15 punches that all seemed to land in varying degrees against Yamamoto.
And the one thing that you notice there, and we've seen in the past, is there's a hesitation on the part of some fighters to just almost go out with an all-around arsenal, like displayed by Fuji, because of the possibility of a submission or an armbar, and it doesn't seem as if Fuji has been concerned about that possibility. Ducks under the big right hand of Yamamoto, and now tries to work him again.
That kick prevented Yamamoto from throwing that big hand. And it looks as though Yamamoto's going down again. Fuji behind him. He needs to be careful. He can get elbowed in the head here unless he keeps his head tight. And down he goes. This is almost a wrestling position here. Looks like the starting of a collegiate wrestling match. I was surprised that Fuji didn't try to do more from behind there, but didn't take advantage of taking his back. He's now in Yamamoto's guard again. Might be able to come around with that left hand. Oh, he's hanging on with that hand. It's hard to tell when the gloves are intertwined like that whose hand is whose. Looks like he's hanging on to the material of the glove. making it hard for Fuji to go ahead and throw strikes. Yamamoto seemingly gives it one or two big efforts and then closes up into a shell and becomes fairly inactive. Fuji has carried this fight from the start. Fuji displayed skills in his first fight both on the ground and on his feet, and here doing it again. He's able to hit on his feet, and particularly against Yamamoto, put him down on the ground when he wants to.
Inside the close guard right now. Fuji inside the guard of Yamamoto. Yamamoto keeping the distance close so that there are no punches thrown, at least at this point, by Fuji. Second fight of the night for both of these men with about a duration of, an hour to 90 minutes of rest time in between with the other fights that took place here this evening. And I hope you have enjoyed all the great action thus far from Tokyo. The heavyweight fights are still forthcoming. And those are the ones you want to refresh your drink for and settle in, because we expect both of them to be absolutely dynamic.
Fuji not taking any risk here. He knows he's got a big round in the bank. It appears as though he might win this round close, so he doesn't need to have to carry the fight in his mind. He's probably thinking, let's make Yamamoto start to become offensive, and I'll pick my time and angle to create my opportunity.
And that's a real key statement, Jeff, right there, because if that is the case, then we are going to have to see Yamamoto try to take it at a different level, shift it to a different gear, and dictate one of his fights for the first time tonight, because he was, as you mentioned, passive against Takase. And in this position of being down on points, at some juncture and junction of this fight, Yamamoto's going to have to make a move.
His only real offensive skills that he's shown in this fight thus far are just big right hands that missed, standing. Once he's gotten brought down on the ground, he really has been unable to do anything offensive. Does he have a guard? Yes, he has a guard. Is he threatening Fuji with the guard? Absolutely not. There might have been one attempt at a submission early on, and after that, there's been no attempts at submission. As I recall, he did go after Fuji's leg that one time.
Right. 1 minute, 25 seconds remaining in round two.
Fuji also is slowed down, but a few strikes here and there are more than any strikes that Yamamoto has thrown. I'm not sure how Yamamoto feels he's going to win this fight. It's a lot like Takase fighting Yamamoto. What can Yamamoto do offensively from the bottom to threaten Fuji? And up to now, it really hasn't been much.
The crowd starting to react a bit. Final minute of round two between Fuji and Yamamoto.
Oh, he's looking for the leg again. Oh, he might get it. And he does.
And there's the tap by submission. The first submission of the night. Yamamoto wins the tournament.
And Mike, that's going to answer my question. What can Yamamoto do to threaten Fuji from the bottom? Out of nowhere, he goes into that inverted guard. And as Fuji tried to maneuver around it, he snaked that Achilles, locked up on it. It was tight, and it forced Fuji to tap.
So the 23-year-old wins the UFCJ tournament by submission. And he waited for his opportunity and literally seized it as Fuji goes down in defeat. So Yamamoto victorious. Here's the replay of the submission.
It's right there when he hooks Fuji's left leg with his arm that he gives Fuji no choice but to turn out. Earlier, Fuji was able to pull his leg out. This time, Yamamoto sinks that knee bar deep, and Fuji is forced to tap.
So Mr. Kuroki and Mr. Sakata, two of our honorable partners and our UFC ventures overseas in Japan, award the belt to Kenichi Yamamoto, our UFCJ tournament champion. Exhausted, but jubilant, as he will be awarded a check now for 1 million yen. And doing the quick math, that is about $10,000 US. So a good night's work for that man, Kenichi Yamamoto, who wins by submission. Let's check backstage with James Wormy.
Thank you very much, Mike and Jeff. Joined right now by UFC matchmaker John Peretti. John's been working double duty this week, not only matching the fights in tonight's show, but also instructing the United States ambassador to Japan, Mr. Tom Foley, in the art of grappling. John, a pleasure to have you with us. We're just before our double heavyweight main event, TK versus Pedro Rizzo. A lot of people looking forward to that one, even more than the main event. How do you see that one going?
I'm not sure. Can Pedro Rizzo kick and defend the tackle? That's a tough order. Can he punch and defend the tackle? Absolutely. Can he knock people out? Well, definitely so. I'm not sure what Kosaka brings to the game. He's the best submission guy on his back. He has the best open guard in the business. He's got a huge head, a big target. He is very calm in the ring. Can he submit Pedro Rizzo? If he catches a leg, he can submit anybody in the world. I think he's going to have to take a lot of punishment in this fight, maybe more than he wants to. But I think he has the ability to do things on the ground that no one else does.
And then we're going to crown a new heavyweight champ tonight. Pete Williams taking on Kevin Randleman. John, you have called Kevin Randleman the finest athlete the UFC has ever seen.
Yeah, I think the finest athlete mixed martial arts has ever seen. Super high vertical jump, incredibly quick person. He can do things that most guys can't do. I mean, there's guys who are probably better trained or have better coaching staffs, and I think we're looking at a great guy. And with Tim Catalfo's help, although he's only had him a short time, I think we're going to see a new Kevin Randleman, just like we saw with Coleman when Ken Shamrock got a hold of him.
And of course, Ken Shamrock, Lions Den, Petey Williams going to get his shot at the title. Petey can strike, Petey can grapple. What's your take on Pete Williams?
Pete Williams is a master submission guy, leg attack guy, but he also is a very calm stand-up fighter. He hits pretty hard. He kicks with reckless abandon. He's an all-around guy and a lot bigger guy than most people think. People think he doesn't have a body. He's really improved in that. His conditioning is great, and we saw him with his cereal and milk this morning. So he's staying on his diet, and I think that we're going to see a lot from Pete Williams tonight.
Couple big heavyweight fights still to come. Another great job by UFC matchmaker John Peretti. Back to you guys in the booth.
Worm JP, thank you once again. And we are set for our first of two heavyweight matchups between Pedro "The Rock" Rizzo and Tsuyoshi Kosaka. TK, let's take a moment to meet these two great heavyweight fighters.
Pedro Rizzo is not your typical Brazilian fighter. He can kick, he can punch, and of course, he can grapple. A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai expert, Pedro Rizzo made his Octagon debut in front of his hometown crowd at Ultimate Brazil. With pinpoint accuracy and quick, powerful strikes, this young heavyweight dominated Tank Abbott, scoring the knockout and leaving one of the most feared men in the UFC flat on his back. He returned at UFC 18 to take on Mark the Hammer Coleman. Using leg kicks, solid punches, and good defense on the ground, Rizzo outscored the former champ and took the split decision victory. He had faced two of the toughest heavyweights in the UFC, and his record was a perfect 2-0. At UFC 20, he squared off against Lions Den fighter Trey Telligman. Maybe the only thing that UFC fans were not sure of was whether or not Rizzo could take a punch. They quickly found out. The two went toe-to-toe until a fatigued Telligman found himself on the wrong side of a big right hook. Telligman was out, and Pedro Rizzo became the only man to record multiple knockouts in UFC competition. So tonight, Pedro Rizzo attempts to take one step closer to the UFC Heavyweight Championship. A victory will make him the #1 contender and secure his shot at the belt, and there's nothing he'd like more. Tsuyoshi Kosaka burst onto the scene at UFC 16. His victory over Kimo was one of the most exciting fights of the night, and his phenomenal conditioning and hard-nosed style impressed the entire mixed martial arts community. He returned at Ultimate Brazil to take on Lions Den fighter Pete Williams, again taking on the highest level of competition and again scoring the victory by decision in a grueling 15-minute match. As a result, TK was selected as one of the finalists in the tournament to crown a new heavyweight champion. He met Bas Rutten at UFC 18, controlling on the ground throughout regulation until the future champion turned the tides in overtime to win and advance to fight for the UFC heavyweight crown. It would be 6 months before TK returned to the Octagon. At last July's UFC 21, the Japanese shoot fighter faced newcomer Tim Lasik in one of the night's featured heavyweight bouts. The rookie looked good, but TK was able to gain control at the end of the second round and score with strikes and elbows. The onslaught was too much for Lasik, who did not answer the bell for the third and final round. TK had upped his UFC record to 3-1 and found himself right back in the hunt for the heavyweight belt. And so tonight, TK returns to the Octagon to face undefeated Brazilian Pedro Rizzo, aware that the winner gets a shot at the UFC title and fighting in front of his hometown crowd in Tokyo. This may be the biggest fight in Tsuyoshi Kosaka's UFC career.
And arguments could be made the same is true for Pedro Rizzo. A chance to move up the heavyweight ladder. To get us set for the heavyweight matchups, the veteran voice of the Octagon, here is Bruce Buffer.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we come to you from the land of the rising sun, beautiful Tokyo, Japan. We will now enter the supreme realm of the UFC heavyweight division. This next fight pits two fine UFC heavyweights against each other, and the winner will be declared the #1 contender for the UFC Heavyweight Championship belt. Let's begin with the first fighter to enter the world-famous Octagon. He is a ballet judo expert with a UFC record of 3-0. He is a veteran of Ultimate Brazil, UFC 18, and UFC 20. Standing 6 feet, 1 inch tall, weighing in at 233 pounds, and fighting out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Please welcome Pedro
Undefeated in mixed martial arts competition, a record of 9-0 from Rio de Janeiro, Pedro "The Rock" Rizzo. This will be the second time in his career that he has fought in Japan. His last, not a strong showing in K1.
Rizzo capable of knockout power, and that includes his legs. Good groundwork, and he's got a solid chin, as we saw with Trey Telligman from the Lions Den.
Pedro "The Rock" Rizzo. And now we're getting set for the introduction of his opponent tonight, Tsuyoshi Kosaka.
And his opponent, next to enter the Octagon. He is a submission fighter with a UFC record of 3-1. He is a veteran of UFC 16, UFC 18, UFC 21, and Ultimate Brazil. He stands 5 feet, 11 inches tall, weighing in at 229 pounds. Hailing from Shiga, Japan, please welcome Tsuyoshi Kosaka!
So there is TK from Shiga, Japan. Fighting now out of Seattle, working, of course, with the former heavyweight champion, Maurice Smith. The best guard in the business, as John Peretti talked about.
Great grappler, capable of good takedowns, but really it's that guard, that open guard that everybody knows is so good, both in defense and offense. And one thing that he's noted for is his outstanding endurance. They say he has a second heart. And of course, with the Lions Den of the Alliance of Maurice Smith, he has improved his striking skills.
You know, it's interesting. If you ask each fighter about each other, they will compliment the skills and the heart of their opponent tonight. They also are quick to say Pedro Rizzo on TK. He's one of the greatest fighters in the world. TK on Pedro Rizzo. He's one of the greatest fighters in the world. So as you look at the tail of the tape between the shoot-fighting Tsuyoshi Kosaka and the Vale Tudo Marco Ruas, Vale Tudo fighter, Pedro Rizzo. You'll notice one thing. We have set up here for Big John McCarthy to get going. One of the best heavyweight fights in the world. Tonight from Tokyo, Japan, and we are underway.
One advantage that I think Rizzo may have is his ability to kick is probably better than Kosaka's because of his Muay Thai background. Look for him to try to employ more leg kicks.
Of course, the continued development of the striking skills of Tsuyoshi Kosaka comes directly from Maurice Smith and Frank Shamrock's participation in the training of their dear friend Tsuyoshi Kosaka. And yes, there is a comfort factor here for the Japanese fighter at home against the Brazilian fighter thousands of miles away from Rio de Janeiro.
Kosaka can learn striking. Rizzo isn't like a natural striker. His bout with Tank Abbott, where he was able to rip punches in the way he did, and then against Trey Telligman, where after weathering that early flurry by Telligman to come back with precise punching, demonstrates two things: skill at strikes and the endurance to back it up. He's a little bit like Pete Williams too, in that when I first met him too, he was a little bit softer than he was now, but each time we see him, that belly is disappearing, there's more shoulder, more definition. So as he continues to improve physically, it's going to equate to better fights.
It'll be interesting to see if this fight develops a bit, as John and James Wormy talked about, in that TK will have to endure a bunch of punishment to be successful in anything that he tries to do. Kind of a blueprint of what could happen without the knowledge of knowing which direction this fight will go. Both of these guys, we know one thing, are now so dynamic in the diversity of their skills, it's hard to call.
The whole sport has developed that way. Now they're so multi-talented that mistakes in any of the disciplines can result in the fight ending quickly. And interesting enough, it looked like Kosaka feinted a shot there, and Rizzo's defense was to back off, and it looked like he was ready to throw an uppercut. So he's trained to look for tackles, look for leg shots.
The only blemish in the career of that man, Tsuyoshi Kosaka, the loss, and the extra session to Boss Rutten. And many agree, you and I, amongst those many, that Kosaka was in control points-wise of that fight before Boss Rutten won his first heavyweight belt, with the barrage of punches that finally knocked out TK in the overtime session.
And what impressed me most about Boss in that fight, that's the real time I ever saw, the first time I saw Boss truly tested, was the fact that Boss Rutten has a second heart. To be able to endure that fight and then come back in the closing minutes of overtime to take out Kosaka was an impressive feat.
And the hero warship has been well documented. Pedro Rizzo of Marco Huas, who could not continue in his last entrance into the Octagon due to the injury in his fight against Maurice Smith. So, I mean, there's multiple storylines, and a punch landed. Multiple storylines in this fight that go further than just the most important factor, and that is the man who stands victorious after the completion of this bout will have an opportunity in the very near future to fight for the heavyweight belt.
Well, that's the prize. Kosaka ate a right hand then. And the other thing about Kosaka is he has a reputation as a bleeder. If he winds up getting cut, that may become a problem.
They exchange kicks.
Solid kicks. But again, the pace slows. This looks like one of those one-punch specials, as we saw earlier, where they all seem to be feeling out, loading up for that one opportunity. Doesn't seem to be any one direction that they're heading, and looking at attrition being the way to victory. It almost looks like there's going to be just that one punch, one kick, one movement, one flurry action that will end the fight.
Kosaka looks comfortable throwing strikes with the legs thus far. More comfortable than perhaps he has been in the past.
Yeah, he's opening up with the legs. None of them, you know, the distance between the fighters is still pretty good. They haven't really closed the gap to where every punch thrown has good potential for landing. Here it's sort of 1-2, 1-2 from way outside. Maybe the second one might sneak in. But they're too far away right here to really engage with their hands. Now it's coming together again.
And those, again, as you talked about earlier in the show, those are a setup, if anything, for TK to try to work towards something else. That one connected big time.
Listen, and look at the welt on the inside of Kosaka's right leg. Oh, my. Reminds me of what Rizzo did to Coleman's leg.
Reminds me of what Smith did to Coleman's leg and what Smith did to Tank Abbott's legs. And those fights, some of them prior to our first trip to Japan back in '97. Good first round. Both guys stayed busy. And 5 minutes of our 15 minutes of allotted time have come to conclusion.
Well, it certainly didn't come down to a grappler versus striker. Kosaka comfortable on his feet. Might feel happy enough to stay there and duke it out, trade strikes with Pedro Rizzo. I have a feeling Rizzo here might start picking up the energy. He really didn't press the fight at all against Kosaka. Actually, neither fighter really pressed the fight. That was really more of a feeling out round. 3 rounds here. If I had to score that, I'd probably given that a draw.
Would you say that you're almost, as an opponent of this man, Tsuyoshi Kosaka's, nervous to the degree of the unexpected because Kosaka continues to develop so much in his skills working with the Alliance? In other words, more simply put, you're not sure what TK's going to bring to the Octagon each time he enters it?
I would say that's fair. Each time he comes in, he's better prepared and he's more well-rounded. He already had the grappling background. What he needed to improve was his striking, and that's what he got out of the Alliance. Pedro Rizzo, however, fits into that very same definition. He keeps improving. No one quite knows what he's going to bring into the Octagon next. And if he continues to improve as he had through his fights that we've seen him in, he's somebody that could very well be wearing the belt down the road.
I mean, as a kickboxer, the record of Pedro Rizzo stands at 31 wins and 1 no contest with 30 knockouts. 4-time Brazilian Muay Thai champion. I mean, this is a guy who can end a fight quickly. And he's ended a couple of them in the UFC that way.
And Muay Thai is an attrition sport. I mean, the sport's designed to do nothing but hit your opponent with fists, elbows, knees, and kicks. And if Rizzo has that kind of a record in Muay Thai, he's used to taking some serious abuse. And he's also very active with his legs. And up to now, we really haven't seen him. I thought we might see more of the kicking or the kneeing, but he hasn't really employed it yet. But we know he's got hands. He's a natural striker. Kosaka had to really work to learn it.
Now, the maturation process of Pedro Rizzo has brought with it notoriety in the UFC, obviously, sponsorships, and more dedicated time to just training with our former champion, King of the Streets, Marco Huas. You can see in the background there, Maurice Smith on looking as Kosaka, with the quick hands at 29 years old, taking on the 25-year-old Pedro Rizzo. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining in round 2. And the heavyweight championship fight, Jeff, still ahead, Randleman and Williams.
And this is a 3 5-minute round fight, and we are into the 2nd round now. And no edge to either fighter. Up to now, basically a draw. We haven't seen anyone dominate the other yet. Another vicious kick by Rizzo, again to the inner thigh of the right leg of Kosaka. There was already a welt there. It'll be interesting to look at it when he comes around. See exactly what that, you can see the bruising already developing in there. That may pay dividends in the 3rd round, slowing Kosaka down.
One thing TK did on that kick, different than the first time that Rizzo connected in nearly the same spot, was he let the momentum take his leg away from it, as opposed to being stronger on the legs and taking the blunt. There he tried the technique again. Moves the leg out, which takes a little bit of that punishment away, doesn't it?
Well, the obvious defense is to lift the leg up so when the leg gets hit, it moves and thus doesn't absorb full impact. It lessens the blow to a degree, but the speed of that leg of Rizzo and the impact power, you can hear it. It sounds like a brutal slap, but it's got the weight of the leg behind it, plus the power of the hip throwing it, adding to the velocity and the impact.
So it's a 50-mile-an-hour baseball bat instead of the analogy we've used in the past with Maurice Smith, an 80-mile-an-hour baseball bat.
Either
Still
way,
hurts.
Getting hit with the bat hurts.
That's right. At 20 miles an hour. Because often in our pre-show routine, I swing baseball bats at you.
Thank you. And I dodge them as best I can. The action is picking up now. You're starting to see them move a lot more. Rizzo seems to be pressing it a little more, throwing them for that little flurry there. It just seemed like they were going to pick it up. Maybe they will. Chess match on the feet. Neither committing to big flurries, 1-2s, maybe a 3-punch combination and just single kicks has been solely the action.
Last chess match on the feet, Jackson, Yamamiya, ended in 1 punch. Now we go down to the ground momentarily, right back up to the feet. Rizzo wants no part of the TK guard, it doesn't seem. He was quick to get right back to his feet, say, let's throw him, boys.
It's not so much the guard. He doesn't want Kosaka on top.
Right.
Kosaka attempted to take down Rizzo. Beautiful sprawl. Flattened Kosaka out, extended the arms. No chance at the takedown.
I mean, the luta libre form of fighting, it does combine the jiu-jitsu skills, so it's not as if Rizzo cannot be effective on the mat, but he certainly likes to throw them with his kickboxing and Muay Thai background.
And his leg defense, you know, when Kosaka goes to kick him, you can see him, the leg comes straight up. He seems a little bit quicker at defending against the kick than Kosaka does. If I were Kosaka and I wanted to get Rizzo down right now, I'd bull rush him. I'd go up top and tie his upper body up, get him in against the fence, and then maybe knock him down. And those are starting to hurt. That nearly rotated Kosaka around. Right hand snuck in through Kosaka's defense, a little bit of a mouse under Kosaka's right eye. Rizzo starting to measure the range.
And Kosaka goes down. Push down, Rizzo waves him up. 5 seconds, final seconds of round 2. Show of respect by these two great fighters. And the bell sounds. I'll tell you what, good defense displayed there by Pedro Rizzo.
Not only good defense, but pretty good offense. He picked his moments and he scored late in that fight. And if I had to give a round to anybody there, I would give it to Rizzo. So I have Rizzo ahead close. And the other change in strategy in that round was Kosaka finally decided that he might want to grapple. 3 attempted takedowns, and really Rizzo stopped any of them before they really got started. Kosaka really didn't have any good tackle shots, no shoots as we call them in wrestling, that were effective at all. Arms extended, face down, looking at the canvas. You want your back up, you want your hips in, you want your head looking at what you're grabbing. And Rizzo is denying Kosaka that, and that tells me that the fight now seems to be going towards Rizzo, because Kosaka wanted to change his strategy from staying on his feet to grappling, and he's not getting it done. So it seems as though Rizzo now, in the battle of where the fight is going to take place, is dictating.
And mentally, those kicks are inside and in between the ears of TK. So now, almost a fake kick can set something else up for Rizzo, because TK somewhat has to protect that right leg of his now.
Probably go to it one more time and then start using it as the setup, remind him of what has happened up to now. But you can see the welt on Kosaka's right inner thigh. It is already has some hematoma, some bruising taking place instantly.
Pedro having a little fun, telling his corner, shh, I got it, I got it, I got it. It's under control. We will see in the next 4.5 minutes if indeed it is under control for Pedro the Rock Rizzo.
Rizzo moving forward now. Kosaka retreating or going sideways. That right hand, nice and straight, not looping. Rizzo's punches look crisp.
I mean, how about the depth of the middleweight and the heavyweight divisions in Ultimate Fighting? I mean, the 4 fighters featured tonight here in Tokyo, Japan, all simply outstanding. All, as we said in the pre-show, working with former UFC champion. The left connects with TK. He's right back to his feet.
Well, that stunned him. There's no doubt. It didn't knock him out, but it definitely stunned him. And
big right.
And that one definitely did it. Wow.
It is over. It is over.
McCarthy stopped it. I don't know if I saw a towel come in there, if the corner yelled stop it, but Big John McCarthy ended the fight. The first one certainly stumped Kosaka, and then when he was trying to get up, Rizzo belted him again with a right hand. And you can see what it did to Kosaka. He's still down. He's still down. He's not all there yet. Rizzo, impressive. Let's look at it again. The right hand over the top, left hook flush. And look at the patience of Rizzo. He didn't just pounce on him. Kosaka back up, but certainly Rizzo got his attention. And as he shoots here, stop, and here it comes. Bang, and he just snapped there. And boy, that one hit, and McCarthy thought he felt that Kosaka was in no position to defend himself. He ends the fight.
And I think he was exactly right, because you saw how stunned TK was after Rizzo scores the TKO at 3:17 of round number 3.
Well, we said it earlier. It had all the makings of one of these one-punch fights. They were all measuring each other, waiting, loading up, and Pedro Rizzo is the man that finds the range first. And it was this two-punch combination that was the beginning of the end for Kosaka.
So Pedro the Rock Rizzo victorious, and he will fight in the future for the heavyweight belt. Let's go backstage, check in with Worm.
Thanks, guys. Here with Pedro Rizzo. A huge win. Did you think you'd knock him out?
In the beginning of the fight, I just felt how I had to fight. I was thinking that he was just trying to fight and stand up just for take me down, you know. So I tried to stay on feet, and I knew if I fight on feet, I would win.
Were you surprised that he didn't try to take you down?
No, I think he didn't see the space to try to take me down. I stay on feet in good base, and I was ready to sprawl when he come to shooting me, you know. So that's why I knew that he couldn't take me down. So when I felt the last round, I said, oh, I can knock him out, so I went. I looking for a knockout.
Pedro, you're the #1 contender in the heavyweight division now. They're about to fight for the belt, Randleman and Pete Williams. Who would you rather fight for the belt?
Hard fight, both. There are no easy fight in Ultimate. Both of them, they have different skills in different part of the fight. You know, Kevin is a great wrestler, good ground pound on ground. Pete is more technical fight, but good submission, good standing up. Both are almost complete. Both are complete. So I think both fighters will be a hard fight.
Pedro Rizzo still undefeated in the Octagon, #1 contender in the heavyweight division. Back to you guys in the booth.
Worm, thank you very much. You saw the excitement of Marco Ruas, and now he and Rizzo will watch with great diligence the heavyweight championship fight between Kevin Randleman and Pete Williams. The winner will be our new champion.
As far as standout athletic credentials are concerned, few bring as much to the table as wrestler Kevin Randleman. Agile, fast, and powerful, this 28-year-old was a 3-time Big Ten champion and 2-time U.S. national champion during his NCAA career at Ohio State. With former coach and present trainer Mark the Hammer Coleman in his corner, Randleman entered UFC 19 to take on former champ Maurice Smith to see who would advance to fight for the UFC Heavyweight Championship. The quicker and more powerful wrestler kept Smith off balance throughout the fight and dominated from the stand-up and grounded position. Mo never even got off a punch, and Kevin Randleman had advanced to fight for the UFC title. In only his second appearance in the Octagon, Kevin Randleman squared off against Dutch kickboxer Bas Rutten to fill the vacant heavyweight championship. Despite the fact that Randleman scored with several takedowns and controlled on the ground for the majority of the fight, the judges went the way of Rutten. The entire Randleman camp was shocked, disgusted, and angry. Feeling cheated and robbed, Kevin Randleman wondered if he would ever fight in the UFC again. When Bas Rutten decided to step down as heavyweight champion to enter the middleweight division, Randleman was chosen to fight for the vacant title. His opponent would be Pete Williams, a man who knocked out mentor Mark the Hammer Coleman. And so Kevin Randleman returns to the Octagon tonight. In doing so, he'll look to avenge the loss of his coach and friend, but most importantly, prove to everyone in the mixed martial arts world that he deserves to be the UFC heavyweight champion. An unknown newcomer out of the Lion's Den at the time, Pete Williams made the most of his Octagon debut at UFC 17 against Mark Coleman. Simply put, it was the most devastating kick the UFC has ever seen. Overnight, Pete Williams went from relative unknown to the new heavyweight threat out of Ken Shamrock's Lion's Den. The next challenge would not go as well. He returned at Ultimate Brazil to take on Tsuyoshi Kosaka, losing by split decision after the regulation and overtime period. At UFC 19, the young heavyweight returned to avenge his previous defeat, showing off his dominance and skill by taking out Jason Gotze with a knee bar submission in under 2 minutes. Last May, Williams again impressed, upping his record to 3-1 with a victory over Travis Fulton and putting him in line for a shot at the now vacant UFC heavyweight title. Not since the days of the super fight has a member of the Lion's Den worn UFC gold around his waist. Tonight, Pete Williams gets his chance to return this once great fighting team to glory and along the way, take home the most coveted belt in the mixed martial arts world.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. This is the main event of the evening. You are about to see two of the finest UFC heavyweights who will each defend their honor in the world's ultimate testing ground, the Octagon. The fighters are ready. The great fans of Japan and the millions of UFC fans watching around the world are ready. Because the UFC Heavyweight Championship is on the line. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to begin the battle for the Ultimate Fighting Championship! Let's begin with the first warrior to enter the Octagon. He is a submission fighter with a UFC record of 3-1. He is a veteran of UFC 17, UFC 19, UFC 20, and Ultimate Brazil. Standing 6 feet, 3 inches tall, weighing in at 235 pounds. Fighting out of the Lions Den in Dallas, Texas. Please welcome Pete Williams!
So a dream come true this evening for Pete Williams in that he has the opportunity to fight for the UFC Heavyweight Championship with our former Super Fight champion in his corner, the King of the Lions Den, Ken Shamrock.
And being a Lions Den fighter, they call it submission for a wrestling. Ken Shamrock put him through hell in learning submissions as they all became Lions Den fighters. He'll probably be good at mixing strikes with grappling. And don't forget, he's got that wonderful kicking ability. Look for him to try to bring that to bear in this fight against Randleman.
So El Duro, the hard one, a single man of 24 years old, Pete Williams, about to begin the biggest fight of his UFC career.
Next warrior to enter this field, he is a wrestler with a mixed martial arts record of 8-3. He is a 3-time Big Ten champion and a 2-time national champion and a veteran of UFC 19 and UFC 20. Standing 5 feet, 10 inches tall, weighing in at 212 pounds. Fighting out of the Hammer House in Columbus, Ohio, please welcome Kevin the Monster Randleman!
Kevin Randleman all about business tonight, sprinting his way into the Octagon, a national champion in wrestling.
I mean, every time I see Kevin Randleman, what a physical specimen. If God had to build an athlete, that's the prototype I'd want to be.
He would build it at 5'10", 212 pounds of ripped muscle, 28 years old, the wrestler Randleman. Pete Williams, the submission fighter, 24 years old. A great reach advantage at 6'3", so that's a 5-inch difference in height, and much heavier, but you won't outstrength Kevin Randleman. There are few in the world who can. A ground and pound guy, Randleman, like his idol, Mark Coleman, and a diversified fighter right here in an even bigger and stronger Pete Williams. Our referee for this championship bout, 5 rounds, 5 minutes each, will be none other than Big John McCarthy. There is a lot of feeling of vengeance right here. Randleman takes to center of the ring, shoots immediately. I mean, this man was absolutely beside himself after the decision against Boss Rutan.
Oh my gosh, what a position.
He comes out there with great strength.
He tried to lift Williams. Williams stopped him, and then Randleman got caught in a back arched position, and I thought Williams was going to land in the mount. Nice trip, the same kind of move that actually hurt Jason DeLucia earlier in this fight. But Williams lands safely, has that open guard on Randleman now, and you can see the effectiveness of the length of Pete Williams, stretching Randleman out, making it difficult for Randleman even to reach up towards Petey's head.
I think it's important just to note as we watch our heavyweight fight that Jason DeLucia will be just fine in the future. An unfortunate injury to end that fight earlier tonight. But this is all about one thing and one thing only. The heavyweight belt on the line for the second time in the UFC's history in the great country of Japan. The last time it was Randy Couture defeating Maurice Smith. The winner here will be our new heavyweight champion.
Well, I'm reading Timo Baki on the backside of Randleman. He's out of the Hammer House, and that's who he fights for, but he's been training down in the Atlanta area with Timo Baki. Timo Baki run by Tim Catalfo and Ken Taylor. And they now are putting together mixed martial art athletes for competition, not only in the UFC, but around the world.
Well, here's a side note to that story. Shortstop for the Braves, Walt Weiss, actually works out with Timo Baki. And in the winning clubhouse of the Atlanta Braves, when they won the NLCS this year, were some members of the Hammer House, including our former champion, Mark Coleman. So, you know, Walt Weiss, the Braves shortstop, who had a great postseason, especially defensively, is watching tonight with interest for his buddy, working out with Timo Baki now, Kevin Randleman.
Neck crank by Randleman. I'm not sure if he's trying to smother Pete Williams or, you know, crank the neck to get him to submit, but Williams seems fine there, striking from there. And up to now, Randleman, aside from that early burst for the takedown, really has not done much here in the top position. Might be trying to feel how Williams sets up and transitions into his very effective submission locks. He's been able to take out the last few fighters, Travis Fulton, Jason Godsey. So that respect, keeping Randleman from really getting up and just flurrying in the ground and pounds. Transitioning now to a headlock, still inside Williams' guard. He needs to be careful. If Williams is able to pop his head out, get to the side, he might be able to reverse, take Randleman's back.
Go, Kevin. Kevin staying active, a right and a left.
Nothing direct. Looks like most of it's glancing or bouncing off the arms of Williams, but Randleman now getting active.
The mental frustration for Kevin Randleman may be to try to do too much at times, Jeff.
And certainly that's a waste.
Because he left it in someone else's hands before and it didn't go his way.
And certainly that's a waste when you're inefficient with your energy burned. You want to be efficient with it, so you should pace yourself. The time to flurry is when you really smell blood and you still have the resolve and energy to get it done. Williams stretching Randleman out. Again, those punches, they're glancing. You can give them partial scoring, but they're not truly effective punches and hitting cleanly. Look at how far away he is. His head's all the way down by Williams' waistline. He'd be lucky just to reach Petey's head from there. But this is Randleman's style. He's proven effective with it. One thing Williams said coming into this is Randleman was able to dictate pace against Bas Rutten and Maurice Smith. They didn't dictate pace, Randleman did. And Pete felt it was imperative that he find a way to dictate pace against Randleman, make him work, make him burn energy.
Well, Randleman has really credited his workouts with Timo Baki, calling it the best gym in the nation. Working out with the best Obaki fighters, learning submissions, and picking up some punches that time by Pete Williams.
3 landed in a row now.
Quick reversal of
Randleman scrambling in the position they're in. Pete can't find Randleman's head, so he's going to hit him in the ribs. And it was all set up because Randleman was doing a neck crank and got way too high, and Randleman able to roll a little bit. And wow, they're in a mount now. He's in a mount now. Oh, and he's scoring on Randleman.
Clock's going to turn out to be the enemy of Pete Williams here.
What a funky position. Somehow Randleman's arm is trapped between the calf and the hamstring of Williams. He couldn't move his left arm. It was pinned in there. Funky position, and something's wrong with Randleman. I'm not sure what's going on here. I can't see Randleman's face on this view. He's breathing, he's moving. He's communicating with Big John McCarthy, obviously. He's grabbing his chest. I wonder if he injured himself. What is going on here? Here's the reversal where he got a little high. Williams moved a little bit, caught him off guard, got to his feet, and then connected in several punches. But as he maneuvers here to try to face Randleman and find his head, Randleman's left arm got bound up in the legs of Williams and trapped. And you see him reaching for it. Maybe it was a rib. He might have torqued the rib.
Torqued a rib, pulled a muscle in the rib cage, some cartilage, that whole area.
Yeah, he was sort of grabbing right around, you know, his left.
Underneath the left arm, right?
Yeah, the pec. And I'm wondering if he popped a rib or something, twisting on the ground with Williams sitting directly on him in that fashion.
Well, that round belonged to Randleman right till the last 30 seconds or so.
That was bizarre. I don't know what was going on, but John McCarthy appeared to be talking to him, so he wasn't out in any way. He was pointing at his rib as if he hurt himself.
Now, he prides himself on being a warrior, and if indeed there is an injury that has occurred to Kevin Randleman, there is no quit in Kevin Randleman as we start the second round.
It was his left arm.
The quarter.
And there, he didn't really punch with that left arm. He shot in, and then he pulled the arm back in. Let's see if it has something to do with that left side. And Petey's targeting that area.
Absolutely. Tried to kick it a second ago.
You bet. Now we'll see here. If he's unable to really pull Williams in, you know there's something going on with that left side. And Williams having no mercy there. He's punching it.
He can't have any mercy, because Kevin Randleman certainly wouldn't have any mercy on Pete Williams. And that is just the discipline of fighters. It isn't disrespect. It's the realism of what your job is to do when you're in there. Absolutely. I mean, listen to some of the pre-fight quotes from Kevin Randleman on Pete Williams. Pete Williams is history. I'm not the type of person who's going to look at Pete Williams and say, oh my gosh, I've got to watch his kick.
Inside trip there, knock him down.
The bottom line is win or lose, if Pete Williams kicks, if he lifts his leg off the ground, it will be his demise. No one can kick me, hope to win. I'm sorry, you're not going to break a rib. He says Pete Williams is a great guy, great young guy. His time as champion will come. Randleman says my day is tonight.
It's funny that he said a kick won't break his rib, but certainly him
Wow.
sitting on his chest might have. I'm lost as to what happened there. But clearly Randleman wasn't out. It seemed that John McCarthy was talking with him.
I mean, he used words as robbed and disgraced and that of the decision. And, of course, that's one man's opinion, the man who the decision went against Boss Rutten. But still he gets his shot here for the heavyweight championship. As we announced earlier in the night, Boss being a middleweight, hoping to lure Frank Shamrock out of retirement in the next millennium.
Well, the first round ended in a big flurry, and unfortunately that has not continued on at the start of the second round. Randleman, a beautiful inside trip, using his right leg to knock Williams down, and they are now trapped in the guard. Randleman looking for opportunities to score. Williams doing some rabbit punching to Randleman's head. Also open palm slapping to Randleman's head because of the impact and stinging power.
Here, Ken Shamrock in the background, and Mark Coleman, two former champions.
This is where he got in trouble last time, but he's back a little bit. He isn't doing the neck crank, putting him forward another foot. Here he's still balanced off, but this is where he got in trouble last time. His hips are high. Oh, good arm attempt. He might have it. Oh, I can't believe, oh, he got it out. I don't know what Williams had him locked up. It looked like if he truly arched hard, he might have got it. But Randleman's power, woo, pulled the arm directly out.
That is pure, a little bit of sweat, you're right, but pure brute strength. And what our fans need to understand, it's not just the arm against the arm there. I mean, Pete Williams is leveraging with his entire body, his weight, his flexibility, his durability against one limb of Kevin Randleman. It's not as if you just pull it away like an arm wrestling matchup.
It seemed like he took his time building the pressure up, and that might have been the out for Randleman, but it appeared as though he had that arm locked out, and it appeared somewhat extended. Couldn't see the whole elbow there, but it looked as though Randleman's arm was extended.
You and Big John taught me back in December of '97 in Japan that when you get in that situation, it's little movements. You got to pull it out because you're not just going to tug it out in a rope. You got to work it easily, but we saw Randleman almost tug it out, which goes against the principles of breaking yourself out of an attempted submission.
There's been a few wrestlers in MMA competition, Kenny Monday getting out of Lober's arm bar, and then there, Randleman just muscling, pure muscle, being able to break that hold off. And big advantage having that kind of power, but you also have to say Randleman's got to be smarter than to get caught in that position. But that's what we call effectiveness from the guard. That was an extremely threatening attempt that almost ended the fight, and if you were scoring, that is how you go ahead and score effectively from the guard position.
There's a hammer, Mark Coleman. 30 seconds remains in round number 2. The heavyweight championship here in Tokyo, Japan.
And really, Randleman has not been all that active this round. And again, well, there's that left hand, so apparently his ribs are okay. He threw it hard.
10 seconds.
Wow, and a page out of Maurice Smith versus Coleman. Williams using the palm of his hand to push away Randleman's head, but he's covering the mouth, cutting his air in the process. Interesting strategy by Williams.
Well, the good start so far as the ultimate is on the line. 2 rounds in the books, 3 to go if this fight goes the duration. 15 more minutes of pure brute and strength and competition in the ultimate playground, the Octagon, and the world's most famous mixed martial arts competition, and I truly mean the world's, the UFC. Don't forget UFC New Year's Eve, Ultimate New Year's Eve, forthcoming. Make your plans early to spend New Year's Eve with us. And then in the next millennium, February 4th, we will be with you. Site yet to be determined for UFC 24.
Well, both seem fine in the corner. Both seem very relaxed. Neither one's really fatigued in any way. It'll be interesting to see how this third period goes. Randleman seems fine. Whatever injury or knot or cramp or stinger he got in his ribs there seemed to be okay. If it was anything to do with the ribs, I don't know if it was his shoulder or if it was the way Williams was on him and his left arm trapped. But it didn't appear there were any blows that would hurt Randleman. Randleman was fine. Pete only got around at the very end and only got a couple of opportunities to strike down at him, and Randleman's up and fighting well.
Now, Randleman said after the fight with Rutten, listen, all I know is after the fight, the man's nose, his cheekbone, his jaw, he might have even swallowed his tooth, were all damaged. He did absolutely nothing to me except 2 cuts on the back of my head. So he was very vocal, very fired up for this fight. And Petey was your typical Petey. Very quiet, considerate, not that Kevin isn't. A perfect gentleman who, once that gate closes, turns into an absolute warrior.
And Randleman right now has Pete stuck in a front headlock, as we say in wrestling. Try to transition to a choke there, but Williams sliding his hips under, putting Randleman in his guard. And we're going to fight from here again.
What can Kevin do from here? What can Pete do from here?
As a wrestler, Randleman's going to have to remove some old reflexes and learn how to pass guard. It's something that most wrestlers have a difficult time doing because all of their instincts and reflexes have been trained to cover a man and keep them down, but not on their back, on their stomach. When suddenly they go to their back, it's a totally different feeling, and it takes time to learn how to really be offensive from there. But the main tactic that Randleman has learned is ground and pound, and that's what we're seeing right here. Williams is prepared for it, having already fought someone like Randleman, Mark Coleman, and he's doing the same kind of style that he did against Coleman, and that is protect himself, but be active enough to always make Randleman work and adjust in that incremental movement and incremental burning of energy, looking for a way to transition to perhaps possibly that arm bar again. He's also good with the knee bar.
Randleman staying busy. A couple of quick jabs, punches that have connected to Pete Williams' face. 250 remains in the third of 5 potential rounds here for the heavyweight championship of the UFC. Our thanks to all the dignitaries of UFCJ for helping us to continue our worldwide agreement to bring you the best in mixed martial arts competition.
Those
Mr.
are
Kuroki, Mr. Sakata, all great men who work so well with Bob Myrowitz, and we hope to return to Japan again in our UFC future. Wonderful country. They understand the fight game, and they certainly are enjoying the great competition here in the heavyweight matchup.
Oh, the Japanese love this sport. In fact, this sport has thrived in Japan for some time now. Pace has slowed way down, and the one thing I can say is this is the tallest person I think Randleman has fought in terms of Pete Williams, and this is really giving him problems in the guard. It also may give him problems on his feet in that the head's a little bit higher. That means your punch has to be a little bit higher, and Randleman throws arcing punches. He doesn't throw straight punches.
You can hear Ken Shamrock saying to Petey, he's tired, come on. And that is the danger when you pack that much muscle in a ground and pound type figure. We've seen it happen to Coleman getting gassed. Now Randleman has assured us that he'll never gas out. But that's still yet to be determined as he works with a quick left and still continues to be well inside the closed guard of Pete Williams. Trying an elbow. 124 remains in the third round.
I'm not sure how effective those strikes are. They look more like the heel of the hand just coming down a little bit in a hack. Nothing behind them, no straight line.
1 minute, 5 seconds. Tom Foley, who's been training with John Peretti and grappling all week long, enjoying the sights of Japan. The U.S. ambassador to Japan in attendance and the former Speaker of the House. So we are hopeful that Mr. Foley also enjoyed a first-hand experience in mixed martial arts, the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So the dignitaries from Japan, Mr. Tom Foley, and others in attendance again this evening in beautiful Tokyo.
Look at how far he's stretched out. He can hardly reach Pete Williams' face, and he's still trying to strike him. And this is where you've got to learn how to be able to pass the guard, get to the side mount or the full mount to be able to strike effectively. But this is Randleman's style of fighting, and he has thus far been effective with ground and pound, being able to take Williams down, keep him down, prevent any kind of submission threat from coming, and then try to get some strikes in. And he's being conservative. He's not just going out there and flailing away. That usually leads to mistakes. And Randleman looking good after that round, but still pretty close fight.
Now, some of Petey's thoughts were that he truly, talking about Kevin Randleman, is going to have to throw a bomb and knock me out in this fight, because he feels, Pete Williams, that he will not be beaten by a submission. He knows the danger of that man's striking ability, but what differs between Boss Rutten and Pete Williams is the size advantage, as you said, and also a superior ground game for Pete Williams. People underestimate, I think, Jeff, and you and I have talked about this with Big John before, off camera and at breakfast at different venues. Pete Williams is as versatile a heavyweight as we have in the game right now.
Certainly well-rounded, has a bunch of different skills he can bring to bear in the octagon, and what that really allows him to do is adapt. And what I mean by adapt is if he's caught in different positions that he's usually not in, he has the skills to still work from them. Somebody like Randleman really operates out of ground and pound. That's his forte. You could see in that one scramble when Williams got on top of him, it didn't look at all like Randleman was comfortable.
I mean, and probably the best submission guy in the heavyweight division right now. I'm just trying to think of the fights. I know he's won by a couple of submissions, but we've seen ground and pounders. We've seen strikers like Maurice Smith, Couture, a ground and pounder, Coleman, a ground and pounder, Fry. I mean, you can go back throughout and not see the submission finishes in the heavyweight division in any other fighter like we've seen with Pete Williams.
Seems to be his consistent mode of operation. And hey, what's effective is what you always want to bring to bear. And what's effective for Randleman is, I'm going to get you off your feet, and you're going to have to deal with me trying to punch you.
And that is where Pete talked about it. He doesn't think he can be submitted. To be able to submit most times, and Frank Shamrock, the perfect example, is to be able to submit is also to understand how not to be submitted. So what Kevin can do in this position is the big question mark, as we still have about 9 minutes of competition officially remaining.
Well, he was able to go ahead and get an armbar on Randleman, and that armbar looked really good. I don't understand why it didn't set, other than the athletic abilities of Mr. Randleman. But that is true. That's exactly what he wants to do. And what he doesn't want to do is wait for Randleman to make a mistake. What really MMA has come to is more of an active guard to transition, sort of what Shamrock did to Tito Ortiz. I'm not just going to lay there and let you try ground and pound and defend it. I'm going to constantly move, and you're going to spend half your time just trying to hanging on to me, and then the rest of it hoping you have the energy after hanging on to me to even strike at me. And because of that, there's never just that one mistake that you wait for. You help to create the mistakes by your opponent.
Well, Kevin is staying busy. He does not want this fight to come down to a judge's decision. It would be our second rendered judge's decision of the night if that were to claim to bear. And our judges, Yumaki, Maruyama, and Fukasi, could be forced to make a pick. But, of course, Kevin still distraught over the last time it came to a judge's decision. And one can argue that inactivity at the end of the fight is what cost Kevin Randleman that decision against Boss Rutten. So while he's keeping busy here in the fourth round, Randleman needs to also pace himself to make sure that he does not leave a less than positive impression in the judge's mind at the end of the fifth round if it goes that long.
We have not really seen any of that in this fight yet, where someone tries to steal the round at the end by doing something. But part of the reason is what can Pete Williams do from the bottom except attempt a submission to really steal a round? Randleman is in control. He's got the takedown. He's hitting him with some strikes. He feels this is a safe and effective and totally limits what Williams can do. And so instead of going open and look for the knockout, he's saying, well, Williams can only do this to me. And I am doing this, and maybe, I can get a flurry or two more in if Williams makes a mistake. So what I've done is create the environment where everything is tilted to favor me. And it may not be the most flashiest, but as Pat Miletich said, win, baby, I got the belt.
Well, someone said it before Pat Miletich.
Of course.
But Pat Miletich has proven true to that statement.
This is better than the NFL.
You got that right. This is the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts. Mike Goldberg, Jeff Blatnick, James Wormy. 1 minute, 25 seconds remains in round 4. I love listening to the former champions in the corner. Take no prisoners attitude by both of these fighters and their managers. And I mean, there's a hero worship for Pete Williams with Ken Shamrock and vice versa. I mean, the relationship at Ohio State well documented with Kevin Randleman and Mark the Hammer Coleman.
Williams needs to be more active on the bottom. He needs to create some scenarios where he has a chance to do it. Start turning, start going to your side and forcing Randleman to hang on to you. And then continue to cross so that Randleman burns energy defending against you instead of burning energy trying to be offensive against you. And that change in just tactic can possibly create openings because nobody likes to always be on the defense. After a while, that can cause some frustration that leads to mistakes. So really, Williams has to do that. And it took Frank Shamrock against Tito Ortiz to truly wear him out. Nearly 4 rounds, and that's what we've come up to here. And it doesn't appear to me that Randleman is worn out. Randleman still seems very fresh. I think Randleman on his feet right now could take Williams down. It's just Williams now, good defense with the guard, but can't generate the offense, which asks the question, how can I win from here?
And Randy Couture was victorious in December of '97 over Maurice Smith for many of the same reasons that you just described. Round 4 is complete. And Kevin Randleman has to be in the lead as of this point. A single flurry by Pete Williams at the end of round 1 has really been El Duro's only offense thus far.
And it was good offense. He hit him with some good punches that seemed to semi-stun Randleman, but clearly Randleman was fighting after Williams got on top of him in that pretty bizarre position where he was sitting on his chest but could not even see Randleman's head. And in the ensuing maneuvering to try to get to a point where he could attack Randleman, that's when Randleman must have hurt the rib, or because the arm got caught in there and got twisted. Something happened to him that it took him a while to be able to get up there in that first round. But as I said, Big John McCarthy talking with him, there appeared to be, no problem with Randleman other than an apparent stinger or of some kind.
Both fighters ready to put a capper on our evening here in Tokyo. NK Hall, Tokyo Bay. 5 minutes remains. The winner will be the new UFC heavyweight champion. You hear Mark Coleman talking about Kevin Randleman being way ahead. Make him come to you.
I'm not sure he's way ahead. A dominant round by Williams right now might
I'm
be
not
able
sure
to pull the fight out.
Again, the mental part of it, Jeff, of Kevin Randleman feeling comfortable with being way ahead.
And yeah, maybe that's what Coleman's trying to do.
But you can't jump out and make a mistake either.
That's correct, and certainly you don't want to feed your athlete the wrong information who may say, well, then I'll shut down and possibly give the fight away. But I have to agree. I think Randleman is ahead, but I don't think it's by way ahead. And once again, easily taking Big Pete Williams down. And this is where Randleman can do some damage. But he's not throwing punches, he's wrestling. He's got a one-on-one and an ankle pick like he's trying to break him down. And this is what's so difficult for a champion wrestler to overcome. And those are his instincts. And he was trained to hold people down here. Why he isn't attacking the neck, why he isn't bringing a knee into the side, why he isn't swinging outside to hit the head. Instead, he's riding him, what we call riding in wrestling.
Part of that equation, Jeff, is that the respect for Pete Williams' ability to take one little mistake and end the fight on it?
Well, I think the patented Lion's Den move here is if he moves up to take the neck, he's going to do a forward roll like that and try to catch Randleman's leg. And Randleman was well coached, had it scouted out. He would have none of it.
Well called, partner. Petey looks fatigued.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean, I'm surprised at that. I'm surprised at that.
You got 235 pounds of muscle just working you and working you.
Yeah,
and
with
working
3
you.
minutes left, he's got to feel a little bit of pressure that he needs to do something because
Right.
he really doesn't have anything to cheer about except way back
Hey,
in
he
the
got
first
ground
round.
and pounded by Mark Coleman. And then all of a sudden, now Coleman was much more gassed at this point in the fight than Kevin, undoubtedly.
And it was obvious, not
Yeah.
only to us, but to the fighter,
No
his
question.
opponent in the ring, and he took full advantage of it. But here you can see Randleman poised, hands up high. There's no way you're going to wing a punch in there unless it's so straight and fast that Randleman doesn't see it. And Randleman's got too much energy right now to miss something like that. And it looks as though Williams is afraid to throw a big bomb because he knows Randleman's waiting to go under him. Petey in a tough spot. Let's see if he's setting him up.
Randleman has even commented on the knockout of his good friend Mark Coleman. And with respect towards the hammer, Kevin said, I'm not going to get caught in that situation. And the way he's bouncing on his feet, it apparently seems to be true.
Inherently his athleticism in terms of stamina and such is greater than Mark Coleman's, and that's not going to allow it to happen. I don't know what that slap was on the face there either. It looked like he was talking to Pete Williams for a second, but hey, Randleman's shutting down. He's forcing Williams to come to him, and Williams is not responding. Williams is really not picking up any kind of offense, and I'd have to say that Williams is tired. This is his first 5-minute fight. This is territory he's never been in before in terms of stamina.
Right. Yeah, his first 5 rounds of 5 minutes, 25 minutes. You're right. El Duro has 1 minute and 40 seconds to change the minds of our 3 judges.
Well,
Tries with an uppercut.
I think Randleman can put this fight away if he can get another takedown and keep Williams down. I'm not sure he wants to stay up on the feet. He got hit by Williams once. There's no reason why he can't feel he can do it again, but certainly on the ground, Randleman hasn't had to worry about anything.
You hear Coleman again.
1 minute, 1:50. Go, Kevin.
And Williams just does not have an answer. Williams just doesn't seem to have the energy.
You can see it in Petey's eyes. Yeah, there you go. Big John says, come on, we got to get something going.
Well, he shouldn't have to speak. He shouldn't have to speak. Williams should be coming after him. Williams has to feel that he's behind because he has not done anything except for that one flurry. Randleman's hit him, and Randleman has taken him down. And it looked like he was going to get the takedown again there.
But Pete knows if he gets brought down again, that could be the end of the night. Just because physically he won't be able to get up. And there it is.
Inside trip again.
And there it is.
He needs to be careful. He doesn't want to keep those arms out like that, extended. You want to bring the elbows down.
That takedown may have wrapped up the heavyweight championship for Kevin Randleman.
Well, if he doesn't get caught like that, and yes, a nice
a combination.
Now
Perhaps
Williams
the
is
explanation
chasing him.
point.
Williams needed to be doing this a little earlier, chasing him down, but even here, he seems to lack the energy to really be able to put him away.
The kick misses, the mouthpiece comes out, and the bell sounds. 5 rounds, 5 minutes each, 25 minutes of competition for the heavyweight fight. And you see the look of disappointment on the face of El Duro. Pete Williams. And perhaps jubilation just moments away for that young man. Heavyweight contender, soon to be champion, we will see. Kevin Randleman.
Well, Williams had it going his way early on, it appeared. But it appeared as though Randleman went back to basics, did what he did best, stayed within himself, and that is takedown and ground and pound. And he was very effective in it. And after figuring out how Williams transitioned into that first armbar, he was able to stay away from it the rest of the fight. And I'm not sure if Pete had really nearly any enough offense to feel that he can even gain a draw out of this. I think there was enough offense done by Randleman, certainly not as much as he did against Boss Rutten, but enough here to earn the title. So let's see what the judges have to say. Williams coming over to congratulate Williams.
Great show of sportsmanship again between 2 great competitors, Pete Williams, Kevin Randleman. Believe me, the days have been long and hard for Randleman. Almost as if Williams is conceding the fact that Randleman will get this decision here. But they have been long and hard since the disappointment of the fight against Boss Rutten. The official decision comes from Bruce Buffer.
And new UFC heavyweight champion of the world, the monster
It's official. Kevin Randleman has defeated Pete Williams. Randleman's day is today. Kevin Randleman, the UFC's new heavyweight champion. Activity inside the Octagon, jubilation and disappointment shared by our great competitors, and it sets up a great matchup in our heavyweight future between Pedro the Rock Rizzo and that man, Kevin Randleman.
And Randleman endured the frustration of what he felt was a controversial call, and he celebrates with Tim Catalfo and Mark Coleman his victory here. And this really has to be redemption for him, because now that the decision on that last fight against Bas Rutten, him winning here, I'm sure that's going to be nothing but a memory now, and he's going to do nothing but look forward and see what else he can attain in this sport.
Mr. Kuroki inside with Bruce Buffer. Let's listen in.
Mr. Robert Marowitz.
Kevin about to get his championship belt from Bob Myrowitz, the CEO of SEG Sports Corporation, and that man, Mr. Kuroki, one of our fine partners at UFCJ. The heavyweight champion. It came months later than he had hoped, but it is his night tonight. Kevin Randleman from Sandusky, Ohio.
Following in the footsteps of his hero, Mr. Mark Coleman, who won NCAA titles, became an Olympian, and of course, a UFC champion, and now it's Randleman's turn. Coleman goes from champion to champion's coach.
And through the use of an interpreter, Kevin Randleman will have the opportunity to address the great crowd here in the arena tonight in Tokyo.
見事 UFC 世界ヘビー級チャンピオンとなりましたケビン・ランデルマン選手です。おめでとうございます。Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I really want to say something. I am not proud with my performance, but everybody that came to watch this fight, you guys got a treat. You had not one but 4 UFC champions training their proteges, and you saw great talent. Ken Shamrock's boy, Pete Williams, he came in ready, and I guarantee you that punch that he hit me with stunned the heck out of me, and I was very surprised. I'm glad that I came back and did what I had to do.
ケビン選手はですね、とにかくちょっとね、自分の、この試合に関しては物足りなかったんだけれども、それにしても皆さん、今回は UFC の4人のチャンピオンが来ていたわけだし、シャムロック、そしてピート・ウィリアムスは素晴らしかったと言っていました。ではですね、日本のファンの前では初めてだったと思うんですが、その日本の印象なんかも聞いてみたいと思うんですが、So, how do you feel about these Japanese fans and everything? I mean, they came to cheer for you and him?
Again, I'm going to say I'm sorry for my performance, but again, and then again, I'm not, because I fought a champion in Pete Williams, and you saw TK and Pedro Rizzo fight, and I guess that means Pedro and I'll fight. And you saw him today dominate, and he was in shape. And I know it's going to be a battle. And I know that I got to go back to the drawing board and do a lot more things. And as far as the fans go, I hope that everybody in here, I pray to God that the next time I fight in this beautiful country with the best fans in the world, the most charismatic, beautiful, caring country that I've ever been to, I hope you guys come back out and see it again.
Thank you. さあ皆さん、ケビンはですね、今度の挑戦者はペドロになるわけですけれども、これはもうかなり自分でもトレーニングしなきゃいけないと言っています。そして日本のファンの皆さんありがとうございますと、世界中で最高のファンですと言ってくれました。Thank you and congratulations again. 大きな拍手をお願いします。Thank you very much.
There's Mark Coleman and jubilation for Kevin Randleman. Some interesting comments that Randleman made to the interpreter from Japan. He's right about the beautiful country, though. And our James Wormy is working his way to the Octagon now to get some further thoughts from Kevin Randleman. But he gave great credit and respect to the great fans here. And we, Jeff and I, say domo arigato for another great evening in Tokyo, Japan. James making his way into the Octagon as John Peretti and Kevin Randleman, along with Mark the Hammer Coleman, celebrate. And the veteran voice of Bruce Buffer, and now here's James Wormy.
Kevin Randleman, the new heavyweight champion of the world. Kev, a lot of people in this world think that belt should have been yours about 6 months ago. You finally got it around your belt. What do you think about that?
Well, I know I deserved it when I fought Bas Rutten. But today, I'm not as happy winning the belt today because Pete Williams, he gave it to me. And if it wasn't for me being a little bit better cardio, we might have had a different outcome.
Looked like he stunned you there at the beginning.
He stunned me. My corner told me, don't go across the ring, don't try and take it to him, wait it out, and use your speed. I said, no, I want to go and see what he's got. And I know exactly what he's got now. I show it right here.
Talk about the importance of this man in your career and your fighting life. Tell us about your training.
I feel, and this is the truth, this man's been behind me ever since I was 19-year-old punk. And every time I win something, this man's right behind me. And I'm gonna show you something right now. This is exactly how I feel about this man.
Kevin Randleman, new heavyweight champion of the world. A happy night for the Randleman camp and the whole Hammer House. Anything to say back to the fans in Iowa? Oh, Ohio, sorry.
Ohio, baby. Sorry. Back in Ohio, I want to say hi to my wife, Barbara Ann Randleman. I want to say hi to Kelly Kerr, Coleman, and the Coleman clan. We'll be back and we'll be celebrating with this. To Atlanta, Georgia, Obaki Fight School, Goldberg Gymnasium. We did it, and we'll see it here in a couple months. Flex Body and Fitness on Bethel Road in Columbus, Ohio. Chris Corso, Jay Taniguchi, All Secure Technology. I want you guys to all know I would not have this belt around me if it wasn't for the great men behind me.
Kevin Randleman, new heavyweight champion of the world. They're celebrating in Japan. Back to you guys in the booth.
Well, thank you, and a great job done tonight by James Wormy, our third man on the broadcast. A night that began with some Japanese fighters who debuted very impressively, like that man right there, Fuji, with the first win in our semifinal matchup in the tournament against Yano, and then Kenichi Yamamoto makes his UFC debut against the man in the black trunks with the t-shirt, Daiju Takase. How about Eugene Jackson in the middleweight division? Again, the left hand of Jackson, in the same way that he ended it against Royce the Farmer Alger in Cedar Rapids. And boom, the night comes to a conclusion for Yamamiya. Eugene Jackson, impressive, 2-0 in the UFC. Disappointment for Jason DeLucia, pure and sheer pain in his match that was won by Joe Slick. That brought us to the tournament final when a very subdued Kenichi Yamamoto reminded us all that submissions are a very big part of the ultimate fighting game. With the knee bar, the night came to conclusion for Fuji, and Yamamoto wins the championship in the tournament. How about Pedro the Rock Rizzo against Tsuyoshi Kosaka, knocking him down, stunning him with the left. And then Marco Huas's star protege, as Randleman talked about, the 4 proteges, and Maurice's is defeated. Randleman was on the ropes. Pete Williams looked good. This is how the first round came to conclusion. But this night would belong to a man who had his own sense of redemption. Kevin Randleman. Too good for the hard one, El Duro. Too good for anyone on this night. Kevin Randleman is now the new UFC heavyweight champion. Great respect and regard for the man who used to hold that belt, his best friend in the world, Mark the Hammer Coleman. A night where dignitaries were part of the action. Tom Foley, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, the former Speaker of the House, our friend, taking in the action here this evening. All right, so if you need more news in the UFC, it is SEG.com. Log on daily for all the updates on the fighters and the future happenings. For entertainment and also fight news on a daily basis, website of choice, EYADA.com. Don't forget, the next time we will convene with you will be upon the changing of the millennium, December 31st, 6 hours of continuous fight action on Ultimate New Year's Eve 99, including a replay of Frank Shamrock against Tito Ortiz, one of the best fights ever in UFC history. And then after the millennium, we will see you February 4th for UFC 24. Once again, a magical night in Tokyo, Japan. We thank our friends in this great country for another night of memories. For my partner, Jeff Blatnick, our reporter, James Wormy, Mike Goldberg saying sayonara and Happy New Year. We'll see you December 31st.